Between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the VRRC for a very special night of racing, because we are not launching into a new 8-week championship as we normally would be at about this time, but instead we are filling the time between championships with a one-off special race as we head to one of, if not the track in Europe, Le Mans in France, for a special 90-minute endurance race. We are trying quite a lot of new things tonight. We are having our first 90-minute race for starters, also our first attempt at multi-class racing as the LMP2 and GTE cars will hit the track at the same time. Some things never change. We still have some good prizes on offer for the top 3 finishing drivers come the end of what should be an entertaining evening. Andy McEwen here to talk you through the action, joined by Jack Oliphant, who doesn't have quite as much multitasking to do tonight as he has in recent times, because our Lord and Master Rich Hayden is now in charge of the wonderful production, and I'm sure we're all going to be taking notes. I mean, wishing him well as we move through the evening. But Jack, really looking forward to this 90-minute racing, multi-class. This is right up my street, and I know you like a bit of long-distance racing too.
Yeah, I'm all about it, to be honest. Like you said, slightly less multitasking. The last 2 rounds of the championship stressed me out a little bit, but tonight I've got 90 minutes. I've got 2 classes. I've got a packet of Milky Bar buttons. Other confectionery is available, and it's going to be a good time, I'll be honest. And as you said, some fantastic prizes up for grabs, and qualifying is soon to get underway. But of course, we've got a little bit of stuff to go through before. And of course, one of them is to actually talk about what on earth we're doing here, and what is Le Mans, the circuit, and the cars that we're going to be talking about. So the Circuit de la Sarthe is the full name for it, really. But we obviously always just call it Le Mans. In 1923, all the stats are there on the left-hand side. But crucially, Andy, it's an extremely long lap with with plenty of overtaking opportunities.
It is. It's a real classic, isn't it, really? I mean, 13.6 kilometers. They don't make racetracks like that anymore, do they? You can tell that it's very of its time from 1923 when it first opened. It has changed layout multiple times. Since then, they built the Bugatti circuit, which is the little thing you can see on the left of the map there, which is used for things such as MotoGP. But it is the Circuit de la Sarthe, which is by far the best known, by far the most recognised. And really, the one part of it that everyone knows is the Mulsanne Straight, those 3 long straights. It used to be one huge straight right down the back of the circuit. Public roads as well, and only 2-lane roads, so equivalent of a B road essentially here in the UK. And racing cars, prototypes and GT cars will blast down there at speeds these days in excess of 200 miles an hour. It really is a blast from the past. And in the virtual world, perhaps a little safer than it is in the real world. And we're hoping that the quality of racing that we will get tonight will be just as exciting as we're used to. 2 classes of cars. See them down at the bottom right of the screen, LMP2 and GTE. So I am no mechanic. I am sure there are people watching at home who will be able to tell you even more than we can about these cars. But basically, a prototype and a GT class. The prototypes are the fastest cars. They are lightweight, purpose-built racing cars, lots of aerodynamics, centrally seated, and we're using the same car as well. All of the cars within each class are identical. So we've got the LMP2 car on the left, and on the right, the Aston Martin GTE with its 5.5-litre V8 engine, a bigger engine than the prototype, but producing less horsepower and, of course, a lot of extra weight. But because, Jack, the 2 cars in each class are identical, we should see some really good close racing, particularly in the early stages, as that slipstream takes effect down the back straight.
Yeah, we love a bit of a close racing, one make race, basically, isn't it, for each particular class, which means that it's really down to the drivers. And I did say in the drivers' briefing, don't be a hero on lap 1. Of course, 90 minutes we've got to go, so that's a slightly different maybe mindset than the 20-minute races we're used to here at VRRC. There are a few different drivers here that have tuned in for this particular race that haven't been here before, but fingers crossed those before. Take a bit of account. And there we go. There is the spotters guide that we've been putting together. One of the new drivers is Case Wilhelms in the LMP2, just by the line. Barbers Collective stamp on the left-hand side, number 37, the orange and black. New to VRRC, and obviously joining us for the special event. Looking forward to seeing how he gets on. And the split is there. The LMPs on the top and the GTEs on the bottom. Any drivers or liveries there stick out for you, Andy, or anything you really enjoy?
I am enjoying Josh Martin's livery, I have to say. That I'm a sucker for sort of neon pink or yellow flashes on a car. That stands out nicely. And Jack Smith always has a good-looking car, doesn't he? Let's be honest. Our reigning champion here at the VRRC. In fact, double reigning champion from our last couple of touring car championships. He's opted to race in the GTE class for tonight. But there are some quick drivers in both of those classes. So I think we should see some good levels of competition across the two. Right then, almost time to dive into the qualifying action. But before that, let's take a look, shall we, around the famous Circuit de la Sarthe.
Circuit de la...
So, Le Mans, a circuit that is known all around the world, but perhaps many of you won't have had the opportunity to enjoy it from the driver's seat. Well, courtesy of Eric Axelsen, we can now take a ride around the famous 24-hour circuit here at Le Mans, beginning with a permanent bit of racetrack, this bit not open to the public. They sweep through the right-hander here at the Dunlop curve, and then head into the Dunlop chicane, often the scene of lap 1 drama, under the famous Dunlop Bridge, and then down into these sort of downhill S's. You have to dab on the brakes here, down into third, into a cambered left-hander, over a crest, into another tricky right-hander, and then a real commitment corner at Tête Rouge. This corner is almost flat out in a prototype, down 1 gear in the LMP2. An LMP1 car, though, would not be lifting off the loud pedal once. Crucial, though, that you get a good exit from there, because now we're on to the first of the 3 segments of the Mulsanne Straight. And, well, in theory, not a lot for drivers to do here, perhaps not on a solo qualifying run, but come the start of the race particularly, this is going to be, for many, the first opportunity to try and pass with a big slipstream and then a big braking zone down into the first of the 2 chicanes down the Mulsanne. This one starts with a right-hander, then they go left, and then flat out through another right onto the middle part of the Mulsanne straight, which, as you can see, takes you over this slight crest in the road, a couple of crests in the road, which actually makes the approach to the second chicane a little bit challenging because you don't have a huge amount of time to position yourself for this braking zone. You'll see drivers often running beyond that white dotted line to the right to try and widen the entry into the second chicane, which is a little bit more open than the first. A big crest there through the middle of the right-hander can induce a little bit of understeer. Again, good exit is required because then we head on to this third and final segment of the Mulsanne straight over possibly the most famous crest on the road. This is where the Mercedes GT1 car famously took flight all those years ago. And then into the right-hander and Mulsanne corner itself. A kink to the right marks the start of the braking zone, and then it's a sharp 90-degree right-hander, actually the location of a roundabout for most weeks of the year. But it is a good overtaking opportunity when we're racing here at Le Mans. Then you're accelerating high speed uphill. This is actually the fastest part of the circuit, even though this is much hillier, not as straight, and in theory a slightly shorter run into the next corner than the Mulsanne. The speed, just as you turn into the Indianapolis complex, it is as fast as you'll go anywhere around the track. Full commitment through the right, sacrifice the line though, make sure you're on the right hand side of the road for the cambered left-hander at Indianapolis itself. And then into a really simple looking but deceptively tricky right-hander at Arnage. It's so easy to outbrake yourself there. And go skating straight down the escape road. Again, get a good exit speed because you're on that loud pedal for quite a long time now as we head towards the end of the public road section of the track and into the Porsche curves. Now, this is where the LMP2 cars will have a big advantage. That downforce really allows you to carry the speed through that long right, and then what should be 2 flat-out left-handers. Not a huge amount of runoff area, as you can see. And then into a really tricky right-hander. You can see you need a wide entry line there to make sure you're on the right-hand side of the road. In the final left-hand part of the Porsche curves, we head past the go-kart circuit through a flat-out chicane and into the final couple of corners. You've nailed the previous 13 kilometres of the lap, but so easy to squander a good qualifying effort through these 2 tricky off-cambered chicanes, the Ford chicane as it is known, before you accelerate out across the line and do it all over again. So that is the Circuit de la Sarthe, the Le Mans 24-hour circuit. It takes a long time to get around it, but as we saw there, Jack, despite the long straights, it's not really an easy ride for the drivers. There's always something to do, or at least a big decision that they're about to have to make. And in qualifying, with only 15 minutes to get the job done, you've got to be on it right from the word go.
Absolutely, and to be honest, I was sat here in disbelief, not only at Eric Axelson's ability to get around the track quite so elegantly, but also your ability to commentate, well, take us through it, to be honest. And that wasn't pre-recorded, ladies and gentlemen. It was live, and he was doing that. That's why you heard my voice, because I thought it was pre-recorded. But yeah, there we go. It does look like a hell of a track. I've driven it only a couple of times on the sim, never driven it in real life. But in the LMPs, it looked frankly terrifying. Especially, it's just the thing I noted is even going through, you know, the straights here, it's just so bumpy. And the LMPs, it must be really hard work, especially if you've got a direct drive wheel.
Certainly, yes. And actually, in real life, I'm not sure how well simulated this is in, well, the sim, but in real life, there is a crown to the road because, of course, for 51 weeks of the year, it is a public highway. And so trucks and coaches and cars are rumbling up and down here 24 hours of the day, and that creates a crown in the road. So actually, if you're in a prototype, the last thing you want to be doing is running down the middle of the road because the car can very easily bottom out. You can see it bottoming out over some of the bumps there anyway, as Eric Axelson, welcome return to the track, by the way, to Eric Axelson, multiple former VRRC champion. But bottoming out is definitely an issue in these prototypes, particularly less so the GT cars. But yeah, the LMP2 cars, they will see the sparks flying as they sort of ground out on the road. And that's what I meant, Jack, when I said earlier on, this is a real throwback kind of circuit. They would, if you tried to commission this circuit now, if Herman Tilke had something funny in his cup of tea in the morning and decided to design this racetrack, he would be laughed out of town. But it's just one of those quirky tracks that somehow we're still allowed to come and race at, and thank goodness we are.
I was going to say it's so historic, isn't it, that you get the impression that if they tried to cancel it, there would be uproar in the community. It's a bit like people have that conversation about Spa sometimes now. It's like, how much do you edit a racetrack while still being able to keep sort of some of the essence? And obviously, um, uh, oh my god, I've forgotten the name of the corner. Oh, it goes up here. Oh my god.
Eau Rouge or
Oh, Rouge and
Radion,
Radion.
actually.
It's Radion, actually. Yes. There we go. Yeah, everybody's obviously complaining about that these days for safety. But if you tried to change that for the safer, everybody would be in uproar. And I think that's the balance that obviously people at Le Mans are trying to keep as well, because you want to keep that sort of special feeling when you're driving it, like those special sort of nuances that only this track brings you, whilst also trying to keep it up to date with what some of the best racetracks and safest racetracks in the world.
Absolutely, and Le Mans certainly have worked on that over the years, and the permanent bit of racetrack is about as safe as it comes, really. So, yeah, it is. It's a fascinating place, a real racetrack of dualities, really, because you have got this permanent bit of racetrack, and then you just head out into the countryside, and all of a sudden you've been transported back several decades in time. But it's a fantastic place to come and race, and a great place to be on your own, clear track, head down. Pumping in the qualifying lap times. Oliver Gibson here goes to the top of the times right now, 3 minutes 31.6, half a second quicker than the returning Eric Axelsen, with them really being the only two who have set a representative time, although Joel Lask now proved me wrong and jumps into the third position. A couple of new graphics to point you towards on the left-hand side of the screen. You've got the timing tower as usual. But we mentioned there are two classes competing tonight. The blue number backgrounds, they are the LMP2 cars. The white number backgrounds are the GTEs. I think there might be one or two more GTEs than LMP2s. But that's a good way to keep an eye on who is leading the two classes. So Jack Smith is currently fastest within GTE. He may only be 7th place overall. Right now doing the job within his class. And really, Jack, we should expect nothing less from our double reigning champion.
Yeah, he's going to be the class of the field, isn't he? Well, that's what he should be, being a favourite here to win. And with his washing in the background, I'm sure his mum will be pleased to see that he's keeping on top of his home chores. But Fabrizio Torri, not that far away. It's difficult to get a really clean lap here. They have been given an extra 5 minutes just to try and get some representative laps in there. Our new driver, Wilhelms, actually, is currently in the pits. The only driver who has decided to dive in. I haven't seen too many others dive in. We did do a bit of a test run about a week ago with about 3 or 4 drivers. It was mainly LMP2 cars. And Oliver Gibson got onto the pole position on that one. And he was saying that I think he got pole position because nobody else set a representative time. It's that difficult. So Oliver Gibson actually has just gone to the top. Sorry, he's already there, but he's just put a purple sector 1 in. But he's absolutely flying in the LMP category. Whereas, like you said, well, Fabrizio Torri's just gone green in sector 1. Jack Smith's lap is currently not going so well. But everybody else sort of improving behind him, so it could get a bit closer.
Yeah, and it is one of those tracks, because it's so long, you don't have a lot of opportunities really to set a lap time. If you exceed track limits or make a little mistake somewhere, then you might not get another opportunity to improve. So there is a bit of pressure on here. The flip side of that, of course, being that actually your starting position doesn't matter massively, although I wouldn't be relaxing too much, Jack, in a qualifying session because of the nature of this track. I think particularly within the LMP2 class, it is a lot of long straights. There aren't actually a huge amount of corners per kilometre, if you like, around the racetrack. So if you do qualify towards the back of your grid, it could be pretty easy, I think, to lose touch with your leading group. And I think in the LMP2 class in particular, where there's less that the driver can do really to generate more speed through the corners because the cars are gripping so well anyway. You don't want to lose touch with the leaders. Yes, you've got 90 minutes of racing to be done, but it can become a very lonely 90 minutes if you lose that lead draft almost, because I think the slipstream will play a big part in the prototype class in particular.
Yeah, and I think it's quite interesting the way you say, there's not many corners per kilometre, unlike, say, the Nordschleife, which obviously is probably, you said Le Mans may be the most famous, Nordschleife, not Nürburgring, maybe the second most famous circuit, especially for endurance lovers out there. But they pose two completely different set of skills needed, don't they, really? And the Nordschleife is unrelenting. And it's, you can make a mistake every 30 yards, whereas in LMPs, you can make a mistake and then sit there for, 10, 15 seconds going down a straight, lamenting about how you made the mistake. And then all of a sudden you arrive at 3 more corners and you have to be on it again. So, it's sort of different opportunities for different drivers, I suppose. It might suit some more than others.
Yeah, absolutely so. It's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? Also going to be interesting to see how our drivers, who are very much used to sprint racing, bear in mind this is largely the same group of drivers who thought a 40-minute race was an endurance race only a few months ago. Going to be interesting to see how they handle a 90-minute race, because we're not having driver changes here. It's just one driver per car. 90 minutes is pretty doable as a stint, it has to be said. Even in the real world, drivers will frequently be in the car for 2.5 or 3 hours at a time, so I'm sure they can manage it. But just psychologically, keeping the brain in gear as you get towards the end of the 90-minute race could be a bit of a challenge for some. Right, here is one of our two, I think, new drivers that we've got racing with us tonight. We mentioned him earlier on, Case Williams, who we can see from the onboard here is concentrating as he moved his way past one of the GTE Aston Martins, Paul Laramie, I think that was. He heads into Indianapolis, sixth fastest at the moment, 5.3 seconds off, but on a lap of this length, really, Jack, that's kind of the equivalent of, maybe less than a second at most other racetracks.
Yeah, it's nice and close, isn't it, really? And I think he's doing a good job considering he's pretty new to it. You can see him actually down there in the bottom right in the Zoom call. Very concentration very high, it has to be said. And he looks a little bit unlike, say, the Josh Martin or the Jack Smith, and particularly different to Jack Smith. Case looks a little bit sort of relaxed, but very sat upright, doesn't he? It's I do like how we can see into the realms of these drivers, because obviously they're sat back at home, how they like to position themselves and how they sort of react to certain things. Jack Smith, you'd hardly ever see him react to anything. Whereas the likes of Josh Martin is pretty much singing and dancing as he goes down the track, isn't he? So we'll see how Case reacts. But at the moment, he's full of concentration to try and get a lap time out of this one. How's he getting on? Not particularly brilliantly. He's set two two sectors that won't be allowed, put it that way. He's gone off track, I think.
Yes, easily done at a few points on the circuit, it has to be said. Now, here is the 131 car, I believe. Is this Mark Stokes? No, it's not Mark Stokes, is it? Darren Butler, there we go. Yes, Darren Butler, whose name is not appearing as Darren Butler on the timing tab, hence my confusion. It doesn't take much, everybody. He is about to set, hopefully, his first legal lap time in the session. He's got time for one more, because he comes across the line with 3 minutes still on the clock. And no, that one didn't count either, unfortunately. So he will now set off on his way in qualifying. Up towards the first corner he goes. And another one of the Phoenix Sim Racing Brigade, which is nice to see. A few more of them coming out to play with us here. And he will definitely, I think, be using this as a bit of a learning experience as he makes his way through the 90-minute race. And that's not a bad thing either. There will be some who are very much gunning for the outright race victory. Others just out there to enjoy themselves. This is Mark Stokes, the other driver who I don't think we've seen before. And he brings his Aston Martin across the line. 16th at the moment, again, yet to set a representative lap time. And he's got one more shot to try and do so. But nice to see a few new names and drivers using this as an opportunity to learn what racing here at the VRRC is all about.
Yeah, well, you mentioned earlier that a couple of the drivers used to think that 40 minutes was an endurance race. Well, a lot of the drivers who used to think that aren't actually here, so they won't actually get to experience what is effective. I mean, even before we went live, Andy, you were debating whether this is actually a sprint race, in your opinion, or whether it's an endurance race. We decided it's an endurance race because it's the longest we do here at VRRC. But yeah, traditionally, obviously 90 minutes. If you said that to the likes of Kevin Estra or people like that, they'd sort of laugh at you and say, well, that's basically a qualifying session for me. I'm not, don't worry about that. But for a lot of these drivers, like you said, there is a difference. But I am keen to see how the new drivers get on. Hopefully that'll translate into entering into the proper championships. Maybe they've been doing a bit of fun races. Maybe they've been doing a bit of time attacks. I'm not entirely sure, but it's good to see them out and on our broadcast.
Yeah, we've seen before, haven't we? Drivers have maybe been tempted to join us because they like touring car racing, and that's what we're doing next. And then they've stuck around for, some of our GT championships and whatnot. So, yeah, hopefully we'll have the same sort of thing here. Maybe drivers have been tempted in because of the endurance format, and they'll stick around then for some of the sprint racing that's still to come. We are getting into the closing stages of qualifying now. Only a minute to go, but remember, as long as you've started a lap, you are still able to complete it. So the session could get elongated here by another 3 minutes or so. And we did have a personal best in the first sector for Eric Axelson, who needs to find half a second here to try and pip Oliver Gibson to the pole position. And it's not going to happen because Eric is heading for the pits. And I think Eric's going to be pretty satisfied, really, with second on the grid. So we'll flip back to Gibson, who is heading down into the first chicane. Now, the first sector on this lap, I think I'm right in saying, is the longest of the sectors. and it's in excess of 2 minutes. So we're a little way, well, probably getting close now to approaching the end of Sector 1 for Gibson. So whether he's able to improve, but I think pole position should be about to go his way, whilst Jack Smith has a whopping 2 seconds in hand over Fabrizio Torri. But Gibson continues to push on and heads into the second of the chicanes. I think it's down towards Mulsanne Corner that the first split ends. We should start getting sector tyres from him before much longer, but other drivers, Jack, heading for the pit lane. Perhaps they're going to go and grab themselves a drink, maybe a little snack to eat before the next 90 minutes of driving begins.
Yeah, they can probably cook themselves a 3-course meal, to be honest. The length of time it takes to get some of these GTEs around here. But Oliver Gibson has just gone purple sector 1. 1 minute 36, which means that the amount of time it took Oliver Gibson to do a first sector in an LMP2 car, you could do 3 laps of Brands Hatch Indy in a Ginetta G40. So there you go. Value for money, I'm not entirely sure which way, but whatever. But yeah, he's flying here, isn't he? And he's been putting purple sectors left, right, and centre. But Joel Lask, okay, it's not purple. And in fact, he's actually off Oliver Gibson's first by 2 seconds. First sector by 2 seconds. But he has just gone green in sector 1. So if he can stick a couple more sectors together, you never know. He could be challenging the likes of Eric Axelson and Elliot Dalton-Out.
Yeah, let's see what Joel can do. He's got a nice little slipstream here from one of the GTE Aston Martins and manages to whip past that pretty quickly. That's going to be interesting when we go racing as well. Traffic management, in theory, shouldn't be too difficult. It's not a massive grid, so they should be able to pick their way through the traffic quite well. And actually, we've picked 2 classes of car here, which are reasonably evenly matched. Clearly, the LMP2 cars have an advantage. They are on average about, well, let's see, Jack Smith, the fastest GTE car, 29 seconds. Let's call that slower than Oliver Gibson, the fastest prototype, but 29 seconds over a 3.5-minute lap isn't a huge amount, so they should only, we think, lap the GT cars twice over the course of the race, and it will take them probably half an hour or so to get to them in the first place. And at that point, they should be nicely spread out. Joel Lask very sideways going into the Porsche curves. That's not ideally the best way to attack that particular corner. But his second sector is going to be ending very soon, and we'll see whether or not he's able to improve at least upon 4th place.
What we should probably mention, Andy, is a little bit of the sort of unique rules that are going to be bringing in for the endurance race, considering we don't have to do pit stops or anything in the championships. Now, I believe there is a mandatory pit stop, but I believe they were going to have to pit anyway, maybe just about, but it is mandatory, I believe. There are a variety of tyres, hence the S and the double S next to their names and next to their times on the left-hand side of your screen, but they can just continuously use the same tyres they want. They don't have to use multiple, they don't have to use hards and soft, they can just use softs, come into the pits, put softs on again and all that sort of thing. So, but obviously it depends on how long the tyres may last and everything like that, how well they can stretch all that out. So there is a little bit more tactics going in here and a few unique rules as...
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, could you hear me?
Not for a moment. No, I believe some internet issues on my end, but I'm sure what you had to say was very interesting. I hope you didn't ask me a question.
No, I didn't, and it probably wasn't that interesting, but it is mainly to do with the tactics that they're going to have to employ due to the fact that obviously a lot of these drivers there's a mandatory pit stop and they can use different tyres if they want to do and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly, and hopefully they've been doing some good practice on that to plan that strategy nicely before we go racing, which we will do in just a few moments' time. Qualifying done, Oliver Gibson on pole in the LMP2 class and Jack Smith within GTE. We'll be chatting to both of them in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody, to the VRRC, where qualifying is completed for our Le Mans 90-minute endurance race. Coming up in just a few minutes' time. Before we get into the race, we're going to have a chat not with one pole position driver, but with two, because we've got two classes. And we're going to start with our LMP2 class pole sitter, and that was Oliver Gibson. Oliver, slightly different surroundings to those that we saw you in a few weeks ago. A very different kind of challenge, this prototype car, compared to the touring car, but you seem to have wrapped your head around it pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's completely different. It's more what I'm suited to. So I love these cars, and I think I'm pretty quick in them compared to the touring cars, which I've taken a bit of time to try and get used to and learn. Whereas other people may have done vice versa for this as well. So yeah, for me, it's like being back home.
That's interesting then, because we don't really get the chance here at the VRRC to race high downforce, lightweight, single seaters or prototypes very much. So this sounds like it's very much where your sim racing background lies.
Yeah, I was doing F1 and stuff like that before VRC, so these cars are just right on the money for what I like. Super light, amazing downforce. I mean, compared to the touring cars, obviously touring cars are probably the most fun cars I've driven, but these are just, I don't know, they're just so fun to put laps in and go as fast as you can around the track.
Which you did pretty effectively in qualifying. Fastest lap time set. Doesn't count for a huge amount, but some nice bragging rights, if nothing else. Are you expecting there to be a bit more of a challenge when we go racing, though? The top three covered by a second. It certainly does suggest we'll have a pretty close battle.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that, but no, for the stream it'll look good, and yeah, it's quite crazy to be honest. With I mean, three of us within a second at Le Mans is over a 3 minute 30 lap is incredible to me. So yeah, I don't know what to expect to be honest. I thought I knew what to expect for quali, but that changed. So for the race, I have no clue. I'm just gonna. I said in the last series at Barcelona. I'm just gonna get my head down and drive. That seemed to work, but no, it's gonna be tricky with those GTs, and obviously everyone behind me is so quick, so it's gonna be quite a challenge. But I'll give it my best.
We never doubted you for a second, Oliver. Best of luck for the race. Congrats on the pole position, and yeah, enjoy the next 90 minutes or so.
Thank you.
So Oliver Gibson will lead the field to the start of the race, but in the GTE pack, well, it's his DK Power teammate, Jack Smith, who's going to have the class pole position, and he is now catching up with Jack Oliphant.
Yes, Oliver Gibson's brother, Jack Smith. What is it like to qualify only in 8th position?
It's weird being in pole, so yeah, but no, it was good. It was a really good lap. I managed to nail it, apart from the last sector, which could have had a little bit more time in it. But yeah, I mean, I'm the only person in the three, so I must be doing something right.
I was going to say, you do seem to be rather quick in that Aston, don't you? Is it? We've heard about Oliver liking the LMPs. What is it like for you? Do you prefer that high downforce? Yet for some reason chose the GTE, or do you prefer that touring car feel and slightly more mechanical grip?
I'll be honest. I did test the LMP and I was fast in it, but I felt like it would get a bit boring, so I drove the GT instead. It's a bit more lively. It slides around a bit more, and there's a little bit more to do during the race. So that's why I went GTE. But yeah, I was surprised that none of the other guys went for GTE as well, considering we just come out of touring cars. I thought it'd be more suited to them, but yeah, it's most of the top guys in touring cars have gone LMP. But that grid looks proper stacked as well, and I think Fabrizio in the GTs is looking quite quick as well. I noticed everyone's on the mediums as well, which is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I found hards are probably the best tyre for this race, so we'll see how that works. But yeah.
Well, Paul Laramie is also on the hards, and I have to say that was the most undercarded flex I've ever heard. And say the LMPs are too boring because you're too good at them, so I'll go to the GTEs where it's harder. But it's going to be entertaining, Jack. I'm looking forward to seeing how you get on with potentially catching up to some of the LMPs as well, and obviously fighting with the likes of Fabrizio and Paul Laramie and the rest of them. Good luck for the race, and you never know, we'll be speaking to you afterwards.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Jack.
Jack Smith for you, Andy. There, it was nice to speak to the two brothers actually. minutes before we go into the race, but it's an opportunity to very quickly talk about our fun races, time attacks, and everything else that's going on. Obviously, the Mount Panorama Bathurst, I'll be there in a couple of weeks actually, is the location for the fun race. Unfortunately, Tom is not racing in these V8s, but it's certainly an ambition of his. He'll be in TCRs. But anyway, that is the fun race on Sunday, 8 p.m, the 22nd of October. Not only that, we have the time attacks as well. Obviously, time join onto the server anytime. Go around Magny Cores in a Renault Sport Clio. It's not Clio, is it? A Megane? Yeah, it's Megane, isn't it? I just said Clio, but completely forgot that it's a Megane on there. 16th of October runs for 2 weeks, and you can win cash prizes if you are a paying member. But if you're not a member, you can still go on there and see how you compare yourself to the rest of the field. And that's for the Fun Cups and the time attacks, Andy. But we've got championships to talk about as well.
Jack, yes, we have. We've got the 2 championships coming up in the very near future. In fact, they're going to be running concurrently. Rear-wheel drive GT4 racing in the shape of the Porsche Cayman Cup. That's the headline act, really, taking place largely across British circuits with 2 little mid-season holidays, one to Vallelunga in Italy and the other to the circuit Paul Ricard in France. And that will all be kicking off on the 1st of November. Later start time than we're used to. All reasons for that will become clear in a moment. As ever, some great prizes on offer if you can finish anywhere in the top 5 in that championship. So if you want to get your hands on some real top-class sim racing equipment, then get yourself over and into the Discord and sign yourself up for what should be an exciting championship in the Porsche Caymans. Running alongside them concurrently the Renault Clios, and we'll perhaps have more of that in the later on in the broadcast, but that will be taking place alongside the Porsche Cayman Cup, 2 championships taking place on the same evening. So let's get on then, shall we, to, again, in a way, 2 races happening at the same time. And, well, would you look at that, Jack? It wouldn't be an endurance race at Le Mans if we didn't race in the dark. It is 1 o'clock p.m, that says. I suspect this is actually more 1 o'clock in the morning. We are about to go racing then for 90 minutes around the Circuit de la Sarthe here at Le Mans. Oliver Gibson starting from pole position. It will be a standing start, so this could be interesting in cars that aren't designed to do this sort of thing. Let's see who's going to get the early advantage. On the run down towards the first corner, the lights are out. We're away and racing for 90 minutes here at the VRRC. And is Oliver Gibson going to hold on to the advantage? I don't believe that he will. The pole sitter has not had a great start. And so Eric Axelsen and Elliot Dalton-Ayres both managed to slip up the inside. And there you can see that he's already Gibson down into 3rd place. Now, everyone careful. You can't win the race through the Dunlop chicane. It's dark, it's cold, they've got very little tyre temperature, and you can really see that from Gibson there, who was sideways off the chicane. And so Josh Martin slips through to 3rd. It is Eric Axelsen, though, who is going to lead them down through the Dunlop curves and towards Tete Rouge for the first time. Jack, some things never change.
No, I was going to say it's nice to see Axelsen back on and enjoying himself after running the touring cars, basically. But now there's an opportunity to jump back in his sim. He's taken it, and wow, has he taken it well. And, well, Oliver Gibson, like you just said, to be fair, Andy, Oliver Gibson may well like the LMPs, but these cars aren't designed for standing starts operations. So it is a little bit difficult, especially if you haven't practiced it so much. And maybe that is what Gibson was struggling with. As Elliot Dalton-Ayres looked at the inside, but I think that was more of a sighter than anything else, trying to flash the lights a little bit as Josh Martin struggled to get into the first apex there, allowing the front 2 to pull away and Oliver Gibson to have a little nibble back.
Yeah, your exit speed from these chicanes so much more important than your entry speed, and you saw that there. Martin arrived with a real head of steam, but then he was slow off the chicane, and so here comes Gibson as he now starts to try and fight his way back to the front. He should be able to draft past, but of course, once he pulls out of the slipstream, he faces that wall of air and goes a bit slower. Meanwhile, ahead of them, we have our 3rd lead change, and we're not even halfway around the first lap. That was Elliot Dalton-Ayres now, getting up past Eric Axelsen. So whilst Oliver Gibson did get the better of Josh Martin, Elliot Dalton-Ayres went to the lead, and this, Jack, is exactly the kind of to and fro slipstreaming action I expected in the early stages from the prototypes.
Yeah, I thought Josh Martin was about to bump up the backside of Oliver Gibson there. Is he trying to push him towards the front 2? I'm not entirely sure, but as they hit the brakes now to go into a slightly more complicated area of the track, it's opportunity for Martin as Gibson goes a little bit wide. Dalton-Ayres and Axelsen still battling out in the GTEs. Jack Smith is leading, and Josh Martin is pushing Gibson here, isn't he? Oh, you don't want to push it there, though.
Oh, no, that's not a good place to be making contact, but you can see why, because they're side by side again for the race lead, and if these two work together, they'll be right back with them in no time. Axelson and Dalton Ayres absolutely level as they go into Indianapolis. You can't go side by side through there, and the wisdom of Eric Axelson that we've seen time and again in the past prevails. Backs out, he allows Elliot Dalton Ayres to go through, and so Elliot Dalton Ayres back to the front of the field, but that has now bunched them all back together. Joel Lasky's not far behind this group either, so really it's a 5-car breakaway as they exit Arnage for the first time and make their way uphill towards the Porsche curves.
Yeah, Wilhelms and Carroll are a little bit further back, aren't they? But having their own battle as it stands. But you're right, the top 5 really getting in at each other, not worrying that there's a 90-minute endurance. I did the driver's briefing earlier, Andy, and I won't repeat exactly what I said, but I basically said be sensible on the first lap because, you know, it's 90 minutes and it's a long lap and there's no safety cars tonight either because Rich Aiden is doing the broadcast, which means we didn't have any opportunity for a safety car. So if everybody crashed in the first lap, that would have been it. They would have just had to do it with damage and do it spread out and everything like that. And obviously, I said, for me and Andy's sake, that's just boring to watch. So please don't do that. But Jack Smith is dominant in the GTE. Did we expect anything less? He's pulled a second and a half away from Fabrizio Torri. Nelson Abrahosa is in 10th position as well. A good chunk of time ahead of Paul Laramie. And Paul Laramie is an interesting one because he's on the hard tyres along with Jack Smith. And as I said, actually, I missed this one earlier. I think Chris Blakey changed to the hards as well.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. Tyre choice as the pit window opens at the completion of the first lap for the prototypes. Tyre choice, an interesting one, because it's not a circuit that's known for particularly high tyre wear, so I would have been tempted, definitely, to go with the softest compound that you thought you'd get away with. The majority of the prototypes have gone for the mediums, though. Joel Lask is on the soft, so it'll be interesting to see how those soft tyres last, and then, like you said, hard tyres for Jack Smith, but they've certainly not slowed him down on that opening lap as he completes lap 1, 2 seconds nearly clear of Torri in second within GTE. He's on the medium, so is Aprinosa. Hard tyres then for Laramie and Blakey behind, and John Jones as well. So a real mixed bag of tyre compounds. All 3 compounds were available to all of the drivers. All 3 of them are being used somewhere up and down the order. Down at the first chicane on the Mulsanne straight, though, we've got our top 3 battling away. Eric Axelson sliding around there through the chicane as he tries to stay with Elliot Dalton Ayres. Behind them, they've got the fast approaching Oliver Gibson. These were the 3 fastest drivers in qualifying, but not, Jack, in the order in which they started the race.
No, and that's what we love, isn't it, really, is the opportunity that there's a lot of slipstream. There we go, there's Eric Axelson. Now, that's interesting, in my opinion, because we went live to his Zoom call at the beginning of qualifying, when we joined qualifying anyway, and down the straight, he was looking very relaxed. He was just holding it with a finger and thumb, his wheel, while he was getting a drink with his right hand or something. But now, look at the concentration on his face. Look at the way he's gripping the wheel. He's absolutely determined to try and make something of the slipstream here on Elliot Dalton Ayres. The hurdle down towards the end of these big, long straights. There's an overtaking opportunity, which Eric Axelson has taken. And look at the closing speed of Oliver Gibson. Went far too hot into the corner. Found an Elliot Dalton Ayres shaped car right on the apex and had to dive out of it.
Well, this is the thing, you see. A lot of them will have done a lot of practice, but often on their own, because it's a big track. Even if other people are in the server at the same time as you, they probably won't be anywhere near you on the racetrack. So they maybe haven't arrived down at Mulsanne Corner with a big slipstream like that. Of course, it's night time as well. That means the engines are producing a bit more power. And so that's probably the fastest that Oliver Gibson has arrived into that braking zone at any time before. Bit of dirty air maybe from running behind the car in front as well. And that just led to a little bit of a mistake there from Gibson. He did manage to get the car under control, but Eric Axelson, now that he's hit the front once more, has immediately started to pull the pin and try to pull away. He's a second clear nearly as they head to the Porsche curves, and this really is the part of the track now, Jack, where drivers can make a bit of a difference. They can try to break away from the group of cars behind, because you've got some actual corners to sink your teeth into from here, really, until you rejoin the Mulsanne straight in about a minute's time.
I haven't done much LMP running before, Andy. I don't know if you have on various sim races or anything before. But I don't know, through the Porsche curves in an LMP car, is there a lot of wash to be dealt with? I'm guessing there is. I'm guessing you don't have as much air if you're following the cars ahead. So surely it's a bit difficult for the likes of Dalton Ayres and Gibson right now to follow Axelson in such close pursuit.
You'd think that, although the gap came down by half a
Yes,
second.
it did. Yeah, that's why I was questioning. My tone was questioning because I was like, what I'm saying is correct, and yet it's not working.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, you're absolutely right. I am the first to admit, despite commentating on a lot of championships that take place on Assetto Corsa, I haven't driven a lot in Assetto Corsa before. I'm just a bit more of an iRacing boy myself, and certainly there, yes, I know. Rich Hayden about to eject me, I think, from the from the broadcast booth. Yes, in there, certainly, these kind of cars would produce a lot of dirty air. In real life, they would as well. Perhaps in this sim that's dialed down. Perhaps it's just Elliot Dalton-Ayres really starting to wring the neck of his car now and therefore able to catch Axelson. I don't know, but yeah, in theory, that's the part of the circuit where you should find it the hardest to follow close behind somebody else, but certainly didn't seem to be slowing down Dalton-Ayres too much on that particular occasion. He's in the slipstream now as well, but as he tries to attack for the lead, he's also having to defend second place because Oliver Gibson has closed right back in. The top three cars covered by half a second, and we are nearly 10 minutes into the race. But right now, this doesn't feel very endurance racy, does it? These three are racing as if it's one of our usual 20-minute sprints.
Yeah, which I'm a fan of, to be honest. I'm here for it. If they can keep this up for the next hour and 20 minutes, I'll be, to be honest, completely shocked, but very impressed at the same time. One last thing that's, well, there's a few things that are unique about this race that maybe you won't have seen before. I don't think we're going to have change in weather. I don't think we're going to have rain up here because I think there's enough for the driver to think about. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to go through a full 24-hour cycle in the 90-minute race. So it's dark at the moment, but you might think, oh, that sky's got a little bit more pink since we started. Well, the sun will rise, the sun will set again over the case of the 90 minutes. So ignore the 1:09 p.m. at the top right. That's not true at all. That's just server time, but actually the weather will be accelerated. So there's quite a lot to think about. Like you said, in the cold conditions at night time, the engines will run a bit nicer, but the grip will be slightly lower. Whereas when we go into the daytime, when we hit 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock on the in-game cycle, we'll have a lot more grip. The engines will run slightly hotter. It's going to be one of those. There's lots to think about.
Well, interesting actually, you say that, but of course the fastest qualifying times at Le Mans tend to happen in the final qualifying session, which usually finishes at around midnight, because the cooler the track is, in some ways, the more grip you get, until of course you get to a point where it's really cold. Yeah, they should be going about as quickly now, I think, as they would do. But that makes tyre choice a little bit interesting, doesn't it? Because you've got to run a tyre that is going to work well in the night time and in the daytime, all in one stint. So perhaps that explains why a few of them have gone for the harder compound, or the medium compound anyway. Side by side, meanwhile, for second place here, Oliver Gibson moving up ahead of Elliot Dalton-Ayres. He's around the outside line. And yes, the pole sitter moves back into P2. And a good time to do that as well, because they just started with their squabble to drop away a bit from Eric Axelson. But look, Gibson, as soon as he gets into second place, starts taking chunks out of the leader, who I don't think Eric Axelson this is particularly strong through the Porsche curves, because both of the laps that he's led through there, he's lost about half a second.
Yeah, and that just pulls him in, doesn't it, a little bit? It's Oliver Gibson is keen. As soon as you try and break that toe, that's brilliant. But if you get it back, all of a sudden you're in a bit of trouble. Now, Gibson, I think, struggled at the last corner. No, he didn't. I thought I saw a little swerve of his car there, but it's absolutely fine, A-OK. And look at this. Look at the run. He's actually got an Axelson going towards even the first and second corner. It's going to be dangerous here for Axelson if Gibson can get into his rhythm. And Dalton-Ayres is struggling to even catch up to the lead battle.
He is a little bit, isn't he? Let's see, though. This is ebbing and flowing nicely. And, of course, as soon as they get onto the Mulsanne, things then start to bunch back together again with that slipstream. So that may well happen again, although Gibson is catching Axelson anyway as they head for Tête Rouge. Full commitment, right hand up. And then accelerate off down the back straight. And Gibson's had a really good exit there. You can see on the Delta, on the timing tower, he's gaining on Axelson. And I think he's going to continue to do so now with that slipstream, to the point that he should be able to attack here for the lead on the way into the first chicane. He's halved the distance already to the race leading car. Is he going to have a go there, or does patience maybe start to factor in? He knows he's going to have other opportunities to make this move, and he does indeed. decide, I should say, to settle behind Axelsen, concentrates on getting a good exit, which he really did that time. And I think this time around, he's surely going to have a go. Does Axelsen choose to defend down the Mulsanne straight, or does he leave that door open on the inside? In theory, if these two were to work together, they could break away from Elliot Dalton-Ayres, but Gibson's not interested in doing that. He pulls to the inside line, gets his nose ahead, and Axelsen, I don't think, is going to fight this one too hard. No, he doesn't. Breaks nice and early, and Oliver Gibson goes back to the front. So I've lost track, actually, already, Jack, of how many lead changes we've had. It has been several, all of them between these three drivers, but Oliver Gibson now finally, after that poor start, gets back to the front of the field.
I was going to say, Oliver Gibson, although there has been plenty of lead changes, this is the first time he's led since he was on pole position, and of course he lost that lead before we even got into turn one, so he'll be relieved to have it back. But in the same way that he caught up to Axelsen and Dalton-Ayres many a time, he'll be fully aware that the likes of Axelsen and Dalton-Ayres can catch up to him. So it might produce a bit of a yo-yo effect, but I think Dalton-Ayres has struggled slightly there, hasn't he, on this lap? And that toe is probably just broken away a little bit as it becomes a little bit of a two-horse race. Yeah, I've just seen in the comments, Linda, there is morning and daytime coming up. Don't you worry about a thing. Don't worry, we'll have a brighter screen for you soon. But as you can see, Oliver Gibson, Eric Axelsen, Elliot Dalton-Ayres the top three in LMP2, and the top three in the GTE category is, no surprise to say, Jack Smith. Fabrizio Torri is the second, ahead of Nelson Abrenhoser. I probably just said that incorrectly again. It's amazing how many times I can say a name and still butcher it. But Eric Axelsen is right on the back all of a sudden again.
He is indeed. Slipstream taking effect as we thought. Now, does he choose to make a move into the Porsche curves? No. And this, remember, is where he does look to have been struggling, and now he's got the dirty air to deal with as well. And yet, look, drops that chunk of time. So this is where, particularly, I think Gibson, who is used to driving these high downforce kind of cars, really excels over someone like Eric Axelsen, who perhaps is more at home in something more touring car or GT-esque, but he didn't drop a huge amount of time. They should be within slipstreaming range when we next go on to the long back straight. They've really dropped Dalton-Ayres now, though, who is 2 seconds behind these two. Joel Lask still in fourth on those soft tyres, fifth for Willems, sixth for Carroll, and seventh for Josh Martin, who's had a very quiet start to the race. He was up there in the top three on the opening half a lap or so, and now has dropped back to the tail end of the field. Don't know whether he's had a moment somewhere or whether he's just pacing himself. Bit of a question mark over what strategy drivers are going to employ here as well. Fuel mileage and things like that is certainly going to be something that is up for discussion. Have they all brimmed the tank at the start of the race? While some of them going for a slightly lighter car in the early stages in order to save a bit of time early, but then of course they're going to have to pit a little bit earlier than the rest as well. Lots to play out over the next hour and a quarter, because we are 15 minutes in, and is that just now the first faint sight of some daylight starting to appear over on the horizon? I wonder if it is. We're about to head into my personal favourite time in any endurance race, and that is sunrise. But of course, with that comes some extra challenges, particularly visibility related.
I was just about to say that, because it depends on where the sun rises and sets. And if I'd watched more of Le Mans, I'd probably be able to tell you that the sun rises behind the drivers as they go down the straight, or in front of them. But at some point, you're gonna get the sun in your eyes, aren't you, Andy? And that's always difficult, because even though it's not in real life, that still is a problem when you're becoming. Depending on how good your graphics are set up, basically, it can be really difficult to see through the sunlight. And I remember driving around Donington once, and it was lovely. It was a very picturesque sounding day. I was in the lead, and the sun was setting on a Sunday of Donington Park, and the final race of the season, everything was luscious. Apart from the fact, as soon as you went down into the first corner or into the last chicane or Melbourne Loop, you couldn't see a thing. There was absolutely, the sun was straight in your eyes. You could not see the track at all, and it is very, very difficult to be able to sort of find your breaking point when you're blinded constantly. So fingers crossed it won't be that powerful in the sim, but again, it is another challenge.
An excuse delivered like a true racing
I
driver.
won the race. You were commentating on it.
It wasn't the one where you got lost then, right? Okay.
No, it wasn't that one. That was the one before.
Funny how I only remember one of those races, isn't it? It wasn't the one you
just
described. No, you're absolutely right there. Visibility, it really is a challenge, and it's something that we don't realise necessarily from watching on the outside. I was looking through the YouTube comments a moment ago, and I saw that Linda was saying, oh, she's finding it hard to watch in the dark. Well, imagine being being in the cockpit of the cars, you really can't see an awful lot. Yes, you've got headlights in both of these classes, but if you're Oliver Gibson leading the race, or Eric Axelson here in second place, you can see the visibility isn't all that great, particularly for the leader, because ahead of Oliver Gibson is just darkness, and the headlights piercing through that darkness will illuminate only so much. And in his mirrors, he's got nothing but the headlight glow from Eric Axelson behind him. So visibility in endurance racing is certainly a challenge. One of the advantages you have in sim racing over the real thing is that you at least don't have all of the dead bugs and the oil and the dirt and the rubber debris that gets sort of smeared across your windscreen. That can really be a challenge as the sun begins to rise or indeed set at the end of the evening. With that here tonight, yeah, certainly adds to the ambiance, doesn't it, of the racing, but certainly adds to the challenge as well. As they head through the Ford chicane, meanwhile, I spied up in the distance, I think, some red tail lights, and they weren't heading for Spain. They were heading for the Dunlop S's, and I think they belonged to our the tail enders in the GTE class. So a bit of lapped traffic to be dealt with, probably before the end of this next lap.
Yeah, it's how long has it taken them then? About 20 minutes to sort of have to think about that a little bit. Which, there's quite a long way to go still, an hour and 10 minutes. It's probably Stokes, isn't it, who's running at the rear end of the field of the GTEs. Now, I don't think Stokes has had a particularly enjoyable afternoon of it so far. Where is he? He's 21 seconds or so back. The last lap that he did, I think, was about 10 seconds off John Jones' lap. No, 13 seconds off John Jones' lap. So maybe having a few issues. He's had a lot of off laps as well. Off tracks in the previous lap. So yeah, struggling a little bit. There is an amount of times they're allowed off the track before they start getting penalties handed to them as well. And I had all my days. My Discord has just decided to not help me whatsoever. There we go. And I'm just having a look at it. I think they're allowed 4 off tracks. Yeah, 4 warnings. So if you go off track, you get a warning, and then all of a sudden you start to get 5-second penalties added onto your time if you go above those 4 track cuts. So it's down to the game. It's not a human decision. It's if the game decides you cut the corner, that's the decision. A couple of drivers maybe are going to be struggling a little bit with that.
That is exactly how track limits should be enforced. But we will not get into that debate at this exact moment, although we do still have an hour and 10 minutes to fill. So let's wait and see where the conversation takes us as we get deeper into the race, because things are finally starting to calm down a little bit at the front now. Oliver Gibson, 2 seconds nearly now ahead of Eric Axelson, so he's starting to break away, and that means that slipstream is no longer a factor, really, in that battle. Elliot Daltonaire's 6 seconds further back, then it's Joel Lask, then it is Case Willems in 5th position, Andy Carroll 6th, and Josh Martin 7th. Jack Smith, meanwhile, oh, look at that. So Rich Hayden reading my mind, leads in GTE by 8.6 seconds. And he is just doing exactly what we expect from Jack Smith, really. He's got his head down out in front, and he is driving away. But you can see, even within the first few moments of cutting to a GTE car here, Jack, just how different these things are to drive. The prototype's glued to the ground, very stiffly sprung, sparks flying from underneath the car as it sort of grinds out on the curbs of the tarmac. The GTE car, though, bouncing and wallowing its way through that Ford chicane. It looks, for me, I have to say, a lot more fun to drive. This is the kind of car that I would prefer to be pedaling if I were out there on track. Jack Smith clearly agrees with me, because it's much more in the driver's hand. You're sliding the car through the corners. You've got to be really careful on the brakes, really careful on the throttle, smooth with your steering inputs. It's a real skill, actually, to be able to drive a big, heavy V8 powered GT car this well.
I was going to say, it looks fat, doesn't it? That's the sort of most appropriate term I could come up with while you were talking about it. Then it looks like it's sort of overweight and wallowing around, doesn't it? Whereas actually, if you stuck it next to a touring car or anything like that, it would look very planted indeed. But compared to the LMPs, like you said, we're so used to them not moving whatsoever and be so stiffly spun that you're right. These GTEs do look a little bit more of a handful. But I think that's, like you said, a little bit more entertaining for me. And when we were talking to Jack Smith, he agreed as well. He was very much the opinion that the LMPs, I took the mick a bit, but he said the LMPs were just a bit, I'd probably say clinical is what he was going for, and whereas the GTEs seemed a little bit more of a handful, a little bit more entertaining, so that's what he's gone for, and currently 9 seconds in the lead of this particular race. Hopefully he enjoys the next hour and 8 minutes of hot lapping in the GTEs. He'll have to worry about the LMPs probably in about 20 minutes time, and he's going to have probably pretty good fun maybe battling with 1 or 2 of them while trying to stay under the radar a little bit, because of course he's not actually allowed to do that.
No, exactly, but that can, that can still turn a race around for both him and for the prototypes, actually. And in fact, we just saw Eric Axelson lose a big chunk of time. I think that's because he's in traffic. I think they have caught the bulk of the GTE field now of our leading prototypes. And if you catch a GTE car through a sequence of corners like the Porsche curves or the Dunlop S's, or even just one of the chicanes down the Mulsanne straight, they can't physically disappear. They have to go through the corners, and that means that the P2 cars have to exercise a bit of patience and just sort of sit behind them. But because the cornering speeds of the prototypes are so much higher than the GTE cars, they lose a huge chunk of time from sitting behind them. So that can really mess things up. Got a good little battle going on though here, haven't we? Towards the back, admittedly, but it is Darren Butler here who runs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th within GTE. He's got John Jones not far behind him, and Alok Iyengar in 15th place. Bit surprised Alok hasn't gone for the prototype, actually, coming from a real-world single-seater racing background, as he does, but he's trying his hand at the Aston Martin, and these 3 are actually the 3 closest cars on track right now, fighting for position.
I'm going off the top of my head here now with Alok, but I think it's Formula 1000 or something that he drives. So there's not exactly much downforce, is there? It's more mechanical grip.
Yes, they're very lightweight though, and very low centre of gravity. They're certainly more akin to a prototype than an Aston Martin.
Very, very true. Maybe he's just got so used to the idea of driving a touring car and that he doesn't want to ruin all that and go into the high downforce stuff. But it is a good little battle here, and it's nice to see the likes of Darren Butler getting involved and obviously enjoying himself, hopefully, during this race here at VRRC. Like I said earlier, we want these new drivers to be taking part in the championships going further forwards, and as they get lapped by the LMP2s, Andy sort of alluded to it before, but another point in the drivers' briefing was the fact that the GTE cars absolutely have to stick to the racing line. They cannot go offline, they cannot become unpredictable. So it's the LMP cars, i.e. the drivers who are overtaking, it's their responsibility to get through the traffic. It's not the GTE's responsibility to get out of the way, because ultimately if a GTE decides, oh, I'm going to all of a sudden jump out of the way, he might go offline completely and be completely unpredictable, cause a massive crash, and then everybody goes home crying. So we don't want that, and so fingers crossed they've all listened to me and they behave themselves.
Yes, now it is a constant course of frustration for me though when we do get collisions between a quicker class car and a slower class car. 90% of the time the blame seems to automatically be sent the way of the slower car, but ultimately it's the job of the overtaking car, in my mind, to actually make the pass cleanly, even if it's not for position, and you've just got to be prepared to lift off the throttle. I think we've actually had that from Oliver Gibson now at the front of the field. He just lost about 2 seconds to Eric Axels, and he's still 1.8 up the road, though, which means we can now focus on this bit of side-by-side racing between Butler and Jones. John Jones here up the inside line into the Porsche curves, but not as late on the brakes as Butler, who retains 6th place within the GTE class. So Butler stays ahead, but John Jones had a big go there, and that little side-by-side exchange has brought Alok Iyengar a little bit closer. You're right on board with John Jones. You can see the understeer that he was picking up there through what is by far the trickiest of the 5 corners, essentially, in the Porsche curves section of the track. As they accelerate now down towards the Ford chicane, they've all been lapped by the prototype field, one of whom, Jack, is pitting. Now that is Case Williams. Case Williams is in. Now he was on the... Oh, was he on the medium tyre? I forget now, but that does seem early for a pit stop.
Yes, it does. And I'm seeing if my timing screen can help out at all, but I don't think it's going to. I think he was on the medium tyres, and of course it's mediums or softs for the LMPs, whereas I think it's the hards or the mediums for the GTEs, really. They're the preference. So that is early. I would have expected Joel Last to be the first to pit, considering he's the one on the soft tyres, but you know, they only need to do 1 mandatory pit stop. I'm not sure what the fuel takes them to, like we alluded to before, but yeah, it's the first blink from Wilhelms. Alok Iyengar and Stokes have also just got into the pits for the GTE category. John Jones into the wall as we ride on board with him, and I have to say that looked like a fairly innocuous take. It just didn't release the steering quickly enough.
Yeah, I've done that so many times myself when driving around Le Mans in the sim. It's a really tricky corner, that the final part of the Dunlop curves, because you go over a big crest just as you're accelerating out of the corner. So the car goes light, and if you've got a bit too much steering lock on, a bit too much weight over the left front, it will rotate on you very quickly, and around you went. It's a very popular place to have an accident at Le Mans. Unfortunately, John Jones finds that out. Now, we have gone easy on them a little bit tonight, haven't we, Jack? Because we've reduced the effectiveness of damage. So I think it's down to 50% damage. So you can get away with the odd knock or scrape without doing too much damage to the car. So you should be able to carry on. As for people making pit stops, I wonder if we are just getting into a fuel window here. We don't know what the fuel mileage is for each of the classes. Perhaps half an hour is what they can do. In real life, it wouldn't be, but it may well be that in this particular setup that we're running tonight, that is what they're going with, and maybe they're just having to pit for fuel. Perhaps they forgot to reset their fuel after qualifying. That's been known to happen a few times in the past here at the VRRC as well, but it could be interesting to see whether that starts a trend now of some of the other front runners coming in as well.
Yeah, well, again, they could be on opposing strategies. We don't know is the answer, because of course we're sort of waiting. We didn't do any practice races. Well, we did do a practice race, but it was only a 15-minute race. It wasn't a 90-minute one. Oh, big moment for Eric Axelsen. Eric Axelsen clipping the curb too hard, lifting the front end, no grip whatsoever. Air gets underneath the car and into the wall he goes. Elliot Dalton-Ayres retakes second place.
And that's the bit of the track Axelsen's been struggling at, isn't it? I think he just tried to push a little bit too hard, just nibbled that curve, like you said, a bit too hard on the inside, maybe trying to copy what Oliver Gibson was doing. But it's very easy, actually, to turn in too early or too late into that first bit of the Porsche curves, because it's a long corner, uphill as well, so you generate a bit more grip than you're expecting, and sometimes if you turn in a bit too early, the car grips up, and then you end up riding that curve on the inside. But anyway, he's largely got away with that. Doesn't feel the need to pit for repairs, which is a good sign, and he's only lost one place, so Elliot Dalton-Ayres moves ahead, but as you can see, he's not that far ahead of Axelsen, who is now only 4 seconds clear of Joel Lask. Shame, because it means that Oliver Gibson's now got 8 seconds of an advantage. Not a shame for Gibson, of course, but a shame for us, because it looked as though Axelsen was going to take the fight to Gibson, but we still have an hour to go, so he may well still find a way to the front. Eric is, after all, still only 10 seconds off the lead.
Well, that and Gibson may well do exactly the same as what Axelsen just did.
Yeah.
Or what John Jones did earlier. And I actually watched a replay of John Jones's. I watched a YouTube feed on replay. And I did feel sorry for him. It was a little bit hard work for him. I mean, it just looked like the car. There was a little bit of a lift. I don't think there was much he could have done, because if he straightened up the wheel, he would have gone into the wall to the left. If he kept it as it was, obviously he then goes into the wall on the right. It's very delicate sort of situation with the pedals, and it can all happen far too quickly. So yeah, unfortunately that for John Jones. Here is Chris Blakey, and you can see him on the bottom right hand side of your screen actually as well. Chris Blakey, not normally having the Zoom call on, but nice to see how he's getting on. Obviously not bad really, sort of in that mid pack, isn't he, at the moment, Andy, and trying to chase down Paul Laramie, one of the closer battles we've actually got on circuit.
Yeah, nice to see Chris on the Zoom call, like you said, for the first time, I think, sporting a very snazzy pair of sim racing gloves. Are you a glove wearer when you do your sim racing, Jack? I know that this splits opinion sometimes. I've always felt that it's necessary to wear gloves, particularly if you're driving for a long period of time.
Well, this is it. When I got, so I used to have a Logitech G29 style thing, and I didn't really think it was a necessary then. However, I then got a Fanatec, and obviously had the Alcantara grips on. And I didn't, although I had racing gloves, obviously, I didn't really wear them, because I thought, I don't know why people do that. It's just, blowing everything out of proportion. You don't need to do that. Blah, 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 blah. And of course, within, I don't know, a couple of hours, I've ruined the Alcantara, but with all the sweat on my hands and all the oils and all the, chocolate and stuff that I probably had in my hands and all that sort of thing. So, unfortunately, my Alcantara is now sort of doesn't really feel very nice. So, whereas the gloves apparently stopped that. Rich, whenever we take the sims to like the NEC or any events or anything, Rich is very adamant. He's religious about everything has to wear gloves when they jump on. And I think that is to preserve the wheels. So I do get it, although I don't think it's really necessary for sort of the immersion. I think that's a bit over.
Yeah, I mean, I actually find personally that particularly if you're doing long stints at a time, your hands start to hurt actually
Well,
because
that
they
is true.
slip a bit, and the stitching of the wheel can dig into your fingers. So
That is true.
I don't know. Plus, like you said, it makes you feel like a real racing driver, doesn't it? Some sim racers, I'm sure, go even further than that when it comes to their racing outfits and trying to.
Well,
feel
Josh
like they're
Martin
doing
wears
the
a
real thing.
helmet, doesn't he, sometimes?
He does. It's sometimes a builder's helmet, but it is a helmet. You're absolutely right. So we'd expect nothing less from Josh, would we? Jack Smith, we're watching here. Meanwhile, continuing to lead in the GTE class now by 16.3 seconds over Fabrizio Torri. He's 23.2 seconds clear of Abrinosa in third place. Larrabee fourth and Chris Blakey in fifth position as one of the prototypes comes up to put a lap here on Jack Smith, and Jack was turning into the Ford chicane there, whether that car was behind him or not. I think that's Joel Lask, isn't it, the fourth placed prototype who bounces a bit wide over the curb, and very easy to see there, isn't it, how you can lose a good chunk of time behind a GTE car, but also how you can very easily end up making a mistake, because if you're stuck behind a GTE car, Jack, through any particular corner really, you're suddenly going an awful lot slower than you would be if you were on your own as a prototype driver, and that messes your reference points up, your turning points, your line changes, particularly as fatigue starts to set in towards the end of the race. It's very easy to make a tiny little mistake, and you only slightly have to put a foot wrong, as we've seen a few times already, and it can have fairly catastrophic results.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily you getting sort of your reference points either. There's not enough air going over the car, is there? Like, fundamentally, the grip just goes. The grip disappears. These LMPs are solely down to aerodynamic grip, aren't they? Although the tyres are very impressive, the brakes are amazing, everything like that. But I'd say probably about 80% of their grip actually comes from air pushing over the car. So if you are behind, if you go slower than usual, there's not as much air pushing the car down. And if you're behind a GTE, they're punching a massive hole in the air as well. So you do really struggle. You have to be very, very careful. It's much harder to follow these slower cars than it is to just be out there on your own, or indeed following an LMP as well. So it's concentration levels need to be absolutely sky high, and I think these drivers are probably learning that. As you say, it's only a 90-minute race, isn't it? I don't know what you said. Obviously, we have to whisper it, iRacing. But have you done many of the sort of Le Mans races or anything like that, on the sim sort of events that different companies put on?
I attempted the Bathurst 12 Hours this year and got fired into a wall at the second corner. So
Classic Bathurst.
Yes, it was my own fault for qualifying badly, I suppose. But yes, that was a tad frustrating. My passion, as you know, lies with oval racing, though, and I did 3 Daytona 500s at the start of the year, which were 3 in the space of a week, which averaged at about 3.5 hours each. So, yes, and very nearly won all 3 of them, but not quite able to get to the line first. Anyway, so yes, I know all about the things that the challenges that can come your way from just spending that amount of time behind the wheel. Now, that's a very different kind of racing. It is very sort of mentally draining, that kind of racing. But so is this in its own way. You've got to be consistent. You've got to manage the tyres, think about the fuel, think about when to pit, manage the traffic as well. So, it's that mental fatigue that can really creep in towards the end of the race. And that is something many of these drivers won't be used to, because they are very, very accustomed to doing 20-minute sprint races. I don't know whether some of them maybe compete elsewhere between our VRRC championships, but if all they do is the VRRC sprint racing championships, then we're even now venturing into unknown territory, because we are 35.5 minutes into the race, and they're not used to doing this.
No, some of them might get bored. They might go on to a different service and race 3 Daytona 500s in a week. It's because that's what apparently people do. So
I don't know how to have a good time.
I know, it's mad, isn't it? I can't believe you come off a 3.5 hour race after being binned in the wall in the last lap. Think, you know what? I'm going to do that again on Tuesday. That seemed like a right laugh. But equally, actually, we did VRRC oval racing, didn't we? I know you were a big part of organising it and everything like that. Would you, maybe not the organising, that's not what I'm asking, but would you like to see oval racing be a special event again in the future for VRRC? How do you think that actually went?
very well, I thought. I mean, look, I will never say no to a bit of NASCAR. I think it's the greatest form of racing and entertainment in the world. So, yeah, I thought it was great fun. And the drivers really enjoyed it because, again, it's something different. And that's what's nice about this race. It's something completely out of the ordinary. We've not done this before. And that novelty sort of, it attracts drivers in to give it a go. And a lot of drivers who did the NASCAR little mini-series that we did went into it expecting it to be rubbish. They thought it was going to be boring, you just turn left, you just drive around in circles, there's going to be no overtaking, and of course they very quickly realised actually it's some of the most fun racing they've ever had here at the VRRC. Very different kind of thing that we're getting here tonight, but I hope that this maybe opens some eyes and maybe, persuades people that there is something to be enjoyed about long distance racing. Because look, here we are, nearly 40 minutes into the race, and we still have some really good battles going on. This one for second place starting to reignite again. So just because it's a long race doesn't mean it's going to be dull and uneventful, and just because your race got an oval doesn't mean it's going to be dull and uneventful either. So yeah, I'm all here for it. I'm happy to help organise it. We just need to get some drivers on the grid, and yeah, let's get some NASCAR back on the channel.
I was going to say, I think we did try and get a championship to run, didn't we? A 6 or 8 week one, but after the special event went so well. But I think it is one of those, with the clientele that we got here at VRRC, obviously enjoying touring cars, and that's the main thing we do, and those sort of track racing as usual. I think the NASCAR is probably best suited for these special events, isn't it? Like the 2 or 3 sort of events, maybe every couple of championships, throw it in the middle, just see what happens, because I think people do enjoy it, but it's not necessarily the thing they want to do every day or every week, is it? Whereas this sort of challenge is probably a little bit more in this clientele's facility. But you never know. As I said, there'll be some friends for you out there somewhere, Andy. Yeah, you're just going to have to find them in America. Getting nice and close, though, between Eric and Dalton Ayres all of a sudden.
It is, yes. Eric Axelsen bouncing back from that crash that he had at the Porsche curves, 15 minutes ago maybe now. And he is, just 0.8 of a second behind Elliot Dalton Ayres. So we're back now to these slipstreaming games, aren't we? Where Eric will start to reel him in quite quickly. Although that wasn't a slipstream, that was just some real commitment under braking. A real commitment sequence of corners, that though, through Indianapolis. It's actually my favourite part of the Le Mans circuit, that, just because it's named after an American oval, but because that camber means you can really carry speed through the turns, particularly in the prototypes. They glued to the road through there. And Eric clearly was feeling confidence, but then he now heads to the part of the circuit where it all went wrong for him a few laps ago. He'll be hoping that the same doesn't happen again. You can see here, you can't really see that apex curb, can you, until you're fully committed to the corner. So it's easy to see how he clipped that curb. And the drivers have been warned, haven't they, before the event, that those curbs are lethal. If you hit the curbs in the wrong way, particularly in a prototype, it'll launch the car skywards.
Yeah, you got no bounce in a suspension in a prototype, have you, really? So those curbs are non-optional. They just don't hit them. But oh my days! Oh my days! Axelsen! How did he avoid contact with Elliot Dalton Ayres there? I don't know about you, Andy. I'm actually looking at the replay. I didn't see that GTE car. Obviously, we're on board with Axelsen. I didn't see the GTE car whatsoever. I'm watching the replay on YouTube right now. And yeah, Dalton Ayres obviously had to go a little bit slower. Yeah, you couldn't see it whatsoever from Axelsen's perspective. That was very close.
No, and that is a great example of how quickly things can change, because, yeah, Elliot Dalton Ayres braked really early for the final chicane. Axelsen wasn't expecting it and really rear-ended him, but you've got to have your wits about you, especially in the darkness. And we do, by the way, believe it will actually stay dark for the duration of the race, so this is a full 90-minute night race that we're going to have. And, yeah, in the darkness, you just don't have that great visibility, and Eric's probably got all of his focus on the back of Elliot Dalton Ayres' car. He's not really looking off into the distance, but you've got to, because things happen very quickly. Again, they're not used to racing in multi-class racing, so that sort of situation wouldn't happen in a touring car race, and yet here it's going to be fairly commonplace, I think. So Axelsen and Dalton Ayres both avoid what could have been a very big incident at the Ford chicane, and the battle continues on.
It does indeed. You just mentioned about potentially staying in the night, and we do believe that is the case. Unfortunately, the plan was to potentially have a 24-hour cycle, but it doesn't look like it's. So of course, they wanted to play ball with that. So it looks like it's going to be a 90-minute night race, like Andy said, which for Eric Axelsen and Elliot Dalton Ayres is probably something to sweat over. Speaking of sweating over, Elliot Dalton Ayres is going to have Eric Axelsen very close to him, and I tell you what, causing a bit of a traffic jam. That's a bit cheeky from Eric there, sort of squeezing him over that much.
Ah, that was a NASCAR move. He used
of
Alok
course it was.
Iyengar as a pick, didn't he, there? He realised that Alok was going to be blocking that outside line because he has to stay on the racing line as the car being lapped, and that was really, really smart stuff, that from Axelson. It's not going to get him very far. He might do it again here. Oh, there's just space up the inside of John Jones's car, but I'd have been closing that door right in Elliot's face if I was Eric Axelson. Elliot's gone back through anyway, and the Phoenix Sim Racing driver back into P2, but yeah, you can use that lap traffic to your advantage, and if that had been the final lap of the race, I think Eric might have been a bit more aggressive there.
He may well have done, but he probably would have written himself off somebody else's Christmas list, two other people's Christmas lists, wouldn't he? Because if Dalton Ayres hadn't played ball and gone into the back of the GTE, then it would have been really very dangerous. But as Dalton Ayres goes a bit defensive here, I thought Axelson was going to drive around the outside, but that would have been foolish, to say the least, as he now just sort of like tries to get up the backside of Dalton Ayres through the sort of twistier section of the track. Like you said, I don't think that Axelson has really had the best run through here on any lap that he's done. Dalton Ayres seems a little bit quicker, as Paul Laramie and Nelson have both come into the pits.
Yes, they have. So that's a good, I don't know, 15 minutes later than our first pit stop is in the GTE field. So there's going to be a bit of a variation in pit strategy. What I think it is they all know they have to make one pit stop. You can probably do an hour on a tank of fuel. That's what I'm going to assume, at least for the GTE cars. Well, it's an hour and a half's race, so you can vary where you pit as long as you pit within sort of an hour, within 30 minutes and 60 minutes of the race, you should be absolutely fine. So I think we are seeing a bit of variation here in that pit strategy. Jack Smith hasn't pitted. He has not looked back once either, I don't think, since he started this race. He is 21 seconds clear of Fabrizio Torri, who has yet to stop. So that is a genuine gap between the top two, with everyone behind then, well, lots of them behind anyway, having made a pit stop now. But Jack Smith continuing serenely on his way underneath the trees as he heads towards Indianapolis. He's got a prototype approaching from behind though, and Jack again has to have his wits about him because we've seen how quickly those prototypes catch. It's not just on the quicker car to be ready for that situation, but the slower car being lapped has to be wary of what's coming up behind as well.
Yeah, obviously they want to be staying online, but it doesn't mean that you just don't look and that you are an idiot. Basically, you have to be conscious about what's going to happen, where people are potentially going to lunge you, because if they lunge you unexpectedly and they hit you, yeah, okay, it may be their fault, but still it's ruined your race, it's ruined their race. If you can jump out the way, then you're going to jump out the way sort of thing. So racing drivers have to be aware, and it may be the only time that Jack Smith looks in his rearview mirrors, but he is doing exactly that as the drivers get past him. Joel Lask is in the pit lane as well, but he's making his way quickly out, and he stays in sixth position, still ahead of Wilhelms. As we shoot further forward to Eric Axelson, back once again on the gearbox of Elliot Dalton Ayres. You think this is going to go on for the next 45 minutes here, Andy? Because it's a hell of a battle that these two have been having all race.
It's been fantastic, hasn't it? I hope it continues, although they are losing time to Oliver Gibson as they battle. Axelson this time goes through, but then look, Dalton Ayres gets back in the slipstream and immediately gets back up the inside. Fantastic stuff. Who's latest on the brakes? It's Axelson just, but they were still overlapping as they turned in. And look, this is a brilliant camera angle, actually, to show the difference in lines through there, because Axelson came in on the wider line. He was then too narrow going into the right-hand element of the chicane, and that means on the exit, Dalton Ayres has the advantage. He's got the slipstream, but he's only got the outside line as they head for Mulzan Corner. It's not really a place you want to go around the outside. He might have cleared him already, though. Onto the brakes. Does he turn into the apex? No, because Axelson's still there. And I think he's still there as they come off the corner. Dalton Ayres on the wide line, though, carries the speed off the turn. And has he finally got the job done again? Let's see what happens as they come over the crest of the hill. They're still side by side, Jack.
Awesome racing, isn't it? These LMPs are difficult cars to drive. They're extremely quick. Loads of downforce. They're not easy, especially in comparison to maybe the MX5 championships or something what we've done. They're just a completely different challenge, but these guys are making them look easy, aren't they, by throwing each other up the inside. Anderson goes defensive. I think he's got the job done for the time being, but we know that he's not the faster driver through this technical side of the track. He's going to have to try and stay in the lead and then get onto those back straights in a biggest gap as possible. Otherwise, they're going to just keep doing exactly what they're doing. And I think these two are going to be glued to each other.
And they've lost about 4 seconds to Oliver Gibson
Yes.
on this lap alone, but who cares? It's great racing, and I think they've sort of waved goodbye to Gibson now, unless he has some sort of drama. Right, something's going to have to give here into the Porsche curves. Inside line for the Dalton Ayres should work out for him, which it does. He clips that curb. That's dangerous, but he does manage to get up ahead of Eric Axelsson, who now slots back in behind again through the long right-hander, and then they flick left through the final part of the Porsche curves into the karting chicane, so named because there's a karting track, unsurprisingly, just to the right-hand side as they drive past. The Ferris wheel glowing bright in the distance, and into the pit lane comes Dalton Ayres. Well, that's no fun, Elliot. We were enjoying that battle. The leader is in as well, interestingly, so we are just past half-race distance, and it looks as though Gibson and Dalton Ayres are going to split the race straight down the middle.
How much time did they waste just for Dalton Ayres to jump into the pits?
Yes.
Mad, isn't it, really? They lost 4 seconds just for them to jump into the pits. But, go, well, that's racing drivers for you, isn't it? At the end of the day, we want them with smiles on their faces, even if they don't win the NGK remote control car, which looks to be going the way of... yeah, there is a prize.
So it's a real Ferrari then. That's a shame.
I know, it's shocking, isn't it? It's unless it's just a really big remote control in the picture. It could be the size of a house. But Elliot Dalton Ayres and Josh Martin in the pits as well now, as Axelsson does take the lead. Axelsson has had all day.
I think you might have lost me again there, Jack. Am I back?
Yeah, I think you're both back. I don't know whether it's me or you that has this issue with Discord, but yeah, I am back. And I was just saying that Eric Axelsson is probably in the most amount of space he'll be in all day thanks to that pit stop.
Yes, indeed so. And I do think it's my dodgy internet, unfortunately, that's playing havoc with things, but we'll persevere. Yes, Eric Axelsson, 21.8 seconds now upon Oliver Gibson. But a pit stop is probably going to cost you a little bit more than that. Josh Martin rejoins the race. And shame we haven't seen more of Josh. Like I said, he looked good at the start of the race, didn't he? But... he's rejoined in 5th place, I suppose, ahead of Andy Carroll. And Willems, interestingly, who was the first to pit, remember, is still behind the pair of them. So Willems has lost a bit of time there, I think. He's going to be within a few seconds of Andy Carroll at least. That gap coming down, of course, as Carroll, still trying to get up to speed. It's going to come to somewhere between 9 and 10 seconds, I think. And yeah, let's see what Willems can do now in the next few laps to try and close that gap down. Of course, he's now on older tyres than those just ahead of him, having pitted that little bit earlier. And I think he pitted before the half-hour mark, didn't he, Jack? So I wonder whether he's going to be able to get to the end on fuel. I'm sure he's done the fuel calculations. Hopefully he's done them correctly, and he will indeed be able to make it to the end. But he pitted a lot earlier than the rest did.
Yeah, no, fingers crossed. It would be a disaster if he had miscalculated. Almost as much of a disaster as me finishing my Milky Bar buttons. About 40 minutes left in the race as well. But, you know what? It's the first world problem, isn't it? I'll live on, don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. Fabrizio Tori's just set his fastest lap of the race. Clearly getting into a bit more of a rhythm, which is quite nice to see. A 4 minute, 5 second point 1. Only about a second slower, 9/10 of a second slower than Jack Smith's last lap. So, yeah, Fabrizio Tori going a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm really excited actually to see how Fabrizio gets on in our next championship if he has entered the Cayman Cup. And certainly the next time we do touring cars, because he won a race, remember, this season in the touring cars at his home track at Mugello. And yeah, that was on genuine pace as well, wasn't it? He was genuinely one of the fastest drivers that night. So I think once he sort of got another season's worth maybe of experience under his belt, he could become a real contender. He's definitely got that sort of vibe about him, hasn't he, of a driver who is quick already and is only going to get quicker and quicker as he gets more experience. So 2nd place at the moment in the GTE class, but a country mile clear of everybody else. I know others have pitted, but he had a big gap anyway over Nelson Abrinosa, who I believe is his teammate, isn't he, who was sat in 3rd place before the pit stops. And yeah, intrigued to see how he's going to get on in that Cayman Championship. Actually, I'm really looking forward to the Caymans anyway, Jack, because we are moving away from touring cars, which, you know, I love touring cars. It's one of my favourite forms of racing, but going to be interesting to see how some of these drivers who are probably very used now to driving front-wheel drive cars are going to handle what is essentially a GT4 car, rear-wheel drive as well, in the Porsche Cayman.
Yeah, I believe the Porsche is one of the cars that we featured quite a lot back, potentially just before you started with us,
I think I
Andy.
covered one Cayman Championship, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like we've done it as a main championship, but before that, we did the League of Champions, which and the Academy as well, which used to run on like a Tuesday, and then the Academy on a Wednesday, and a fantastic sort of format of a championship. To be honest, it's a bit of a shame we don't do it anymore. But it's I believe the Caymans did appear quite often in both of those, the Academy cars and in the main championships as well. So yeah, they're really awesome. Everybody likes them. They're just a bit more powerful than say an MX-5. But they're a similar sort of put together, aren't they? They're put together sort of similarly to an MX-5, I should say, actually. Rear-wheel drive, not massively powerful, but a little bit more poke about them. Real sort of driver's car in terms of the fact that there isn't much aero, it's mechanical grip. So, yeah, I think everybody's going to enjoy them. I'm so good.
I seem to remember Scott Bugner. That was kind of where he first emerged, didn't he?
What a throwback.
Yeah, see, I do remember some things, not usually the important stuff, but yeah, I do distinctly remember him being pretty competitive the last time we used the Caymans. Right, we've had a pit stop from Eric Axelson. Observant amongst you will have realised, and he's come out ahead of Elliot Dalton, who nearly got it all wrong into the chicane. And again, Jack, that was caused by the traffic. He went in offline because he was up the inside of one of the Aston Martins, and that just messed up his reference points. So that gives Axelson over a second, probably, of an advantage by the time Elliot gets back up to speed. And, well, we'll see whether or not Elliot's got the pace to close back in again. But with all of the pit stops complete now for our LMP2 field, Oliver Gibson 19.5 seconds clear of Eric Axelson in second, and Elliot Dalton in third position, Joel Last fourth, Josh Martin fifth, Andy Carroll sixth, and then Willems in seventh place, with Jack Smith continuing to lead in the GTEs. But yeah, Elliot Dalton slipping away, and he might now be out of slipstreaming range, I reckon.
Yeah, potentially. Sorry, I'm very distracted right now. I don't actually hear what you said at the end there, because Josh Martin's in the YouTube chat. Now, I'm pretty sure Josh Martin was in an LMP2 car about 5 minutes ago. So I'm not entirely sure. Josh, why are you in the YouTube chat? Enlighten us. Might be worth bringing him in for a chat, actually, because unlike us two, he's actually driven the damn thing. So it'd be quite interesting to bring him in. But he is still out there. So has Dave hacked his YouTube? I don't know.
Well, or I didn't notice the timing of that comment, but I would put some money on it appearing as he was going down the Mulsanne Straight, and it would be a very Josh Martin thing to do, wouldn't it, to be typing away in the YouTube chat whilst driving down the Mulsanne. We'll wait and see. If he puts a message up when he's going through the Porsche curves, I really will be impressed.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I think even that will be investigating what happened to Dave, because he hasn't appeared on the YouTube chat recently. So yeah, I wonder what he'd be doing. But yeah, good stuff by Josh Martin. At least he's putting the effort in to entertain the fans, even if he hasn't got much of a race going on. Where is the closest races going on, Andy, right now? The sort of GTEs have really spaced themselves out, haven't they, unfortunately?
Yeah, I'm not sure how, because we had a good battle between Butler, Iyengar and Jones. Jones has retired. I don't know whether he's had another accident somewhere. We saw him in the barriers earlier on. So he is out of it now. There is Chris Blakey. He's sat in fourth position right now. Pretty lonely fourth place, but not that lonely, because he's got one of the prototypes in behind. About to put a lap on him, and look, he does now try and move out of the way, and that nearly messed it up for both of them, really, because he ended up offline. The prototype had to sort of take evasive action as well. That nearly ended in tears there, but Chris Blakey trying to do the right thing, and very nearly ending up skating off the road as well. We've got 35 minutes of the race to go. And, well, to answer your question, the closest battle is still that one for second place in the prototype class, isn't it? Because Elliot Dalton is closing back in on Eric Axelson. Well, he was, until he made a bit of a mess of the Dunlop chicane there, and drops back again. But I think he has got pace still to be a thorn in Axelson's side.
He does indeed. I'm looking forward to seeing how he deals with obviously catching up. It's been a while since we've seen these two battle, i.e. it's been about 15 minutes. So if that actually, I think it was only about 10 minutes ago. They were glued to each other, weren't they, before Dalton has jumped into the pits. Has Axelson pitted?
Yes, he has.
Yes, he has, yeah. So there we go. They're both on equal footing up until they do catch up to each other. I've just been looking back to, I was curious when we did the Cayman Cup last, actually. And it turns out it was the 16th of March, 2022. Wow. So a year and a half ago. That's how long we've had to work together, Andy. That's ridiculous. There should be some kind of lawsuit in there for Rich Hayden having to put this together. But anyway, yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? Considering if that was one of your earlier championships now. It does fly by. These 8-week chunks of the calendar does make the year fly by.
I think that was my second championship, maybe the third. I forget exactly what I came in because there was a touring car championship at some point, maybe during a lockdown, and then you haven't got rid of me since. So yeah, I think it was either Caymans or Mazdas next. One of those sort of championships. Yeah, back in the very early days, that wasn't it? And only I knew then what I knew now. No, I've absolutely loved my time in the VRRC so far, and yeah, looking very much forward to getting those Caymans back out. I'm going to have to see if my stats spreadsheet stretches back that far, because I'm pretty sure I do have some race results from the
120 tabs ago or something.
Yes, something like that. Yes, but I'll see if I can dig some out before the next championship starts. Be interesting, wouldn't it, to see whether it's the same drivers now mixing it at the front, because we've made the point a few times in recent championships that actually we do now have different drivers winning races, fighting for championships than we had back then. A couple of them, I'm sure, will be familiar, but yeah, I wonder whether there'll be a few drivers maybe who were languishing at the back of the top 10 who are now regular front runners.
Yeah, well, actually, I've decided, you know what, I'm actually going to click on the video now and have a look, and I'm actually quite curious to see. We got the likes of Paul Laramie running in second place. I think this is right at the start of the second race, potentially. So Paul Laramie, Jordan Brennan was on there. Nicky Taylor's still around. Carl Felvis, Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Loads. Ethan Hill, obviously, still around. Paul Zanatechi, now there's a throwback name.
Yes.
Winning was Nathan Blank. Which, again, a bit of a throwback name. Chris Shepherd and Jordan Brennan. Tell you what, these are a lot of names that a lot of people in YouTube... I know it's just me reading out some names, but a lot of the people in YouTube chat will also have a sort of oh, God, yeah, they used to race here, didn't they? But, yeah, it was a good championship, and fingers crossed. A lot of those drivers might actually remember a thing or two about driving the cars.
Yes, I reckon so. Oh, yes, I found my old spreadsheet. Nicky Taylor won the first two races of that championship. Do you remember from Road Atlanta? Carl Felvis won a couple of times. Jordan Brennan was a winner 3 times. Of course, he's concentrating very much on his real world racing program. Ethan Hill had a win. Chris Shepherd, that's a name that we haven't seen for a while. He won a race at Hockenheim. And yeah, it was a championship, I think, won by Nicky Taylor in the end. But yeah, there we go. So looking forward to getting them back out. So then we went to the Civic Cup as well, didn't we, after that? So
we did, yeah.
So many fantastic championships we've had the pleasure of commentating on over the last nearly 2 years. Doesn't time fly when you're having fun?
Exactly. And I think the Civics, I remember Eric Axelson sort of bursting onto the scene somewhat in a Civic championship. I don't know if it was that one after the Caymans or if it was the one before it, potentially. But I do remember Eric sort of jumping on all of a sudden, upsetting the apple cart somewhat over the top 3 back in those days. I remember Brands Hatch race where he particularly did very impressively. He'd probably be able to tell you a bit more about it than I would. But yeah, no, it's nice to sort of look back, and there have been some absolutely mega. The Camis Simulation GTV3 Championship, although that was the historic, the argument with the double distance races, or whether they're endurance or not, of course. But that was an element of championship that I really enjoyed. I think we alternated, didn't we, sprint racing, and then the next week we did like the 40-minute race and stuff like that. That was a really sort of nice, unique championship.
It was, yes. It's nice to play around with the format, really, where possible as well. So, yeah, no, that was the GT cars were good fun, actually. And as we're seeing, there are drivers who are keen to drive GT cars or even prototypes as well. Whether it will work for a full championship, I don't know, but that's where these special events can come in. It's a great chance for them to get behind the wheel of a type of car that we don't often see them getting the chance to drive. So yeah, good stuff. And the Caymans, I'm sure, I believe, is already looking to be a popular championship, and we're looking forward to some good racing. I am very tempted, I've got to say though, Jack, if we don't end up broadcasting it, I'm very tempted to jump behind the wheel of the Clio, because that's right up my street, that short wheelbase front wheel drive, and maybe we could warm ourselves up for race nights by jumping out onto the track and showing the rest of them how it's done. What do you think?
Well, I was going to say, I'm not going to be too committal because Rich will have a contract written up by the time we get to the last 10 minutes. But I'm going to just sort of keep that one on the fence. If it was the other way round, I'll tell you, I'd be straight on it. Like the Caymans, if they were the first one that wasn't broadcast, and then the Clios were the main championship, I love the idea of it, to be honest. Anything that's sort of rear-wheel drive and sort of not gonna kill me, it's something I'm gonna be used to. So, like, for instance, the LMPs, the GTEs, I think there's slightly sort of cut above my standard in sim racing, whereas the Porsches and the MX-5s and that sort of ilk of the world, I think I can just about get on board with. The Clios, as you know, Andy, never got used to front-wheel drive. I don't know why you prefer it, honestly. It's madness to me.
Nikki Taylor has just made the very valid point that if we do the Clios, we get to race against him and Kyle. So I am out and quite happy to sit and watch from the sidelines. Thank you, Nikki, for bringing me to my senses. Now, the danger of bringing this back on topic, Jack, do you see what's happening to the, what was night and is now early morning sky? We're going to get a bit of pink, a bit of orange appearing in the sky. So we are going to drive, I think, into the sunrise here, just in the final half an hour or so of the race. So track conditions are going to start changing, and as the cars emerge into the light, we have another pit stop from Eric Axelsen. Eric Axelsen into the pit lane from second place. What's that all about?
I'm not entirely sure. I wish we did sort of in-race comms, to be honest. I know some championships do that sometimes, don't they, with their sort of special events and everything like that. It would have been interesting to find out what the thought process is there. Or is it a drive-through? He hasn't actually stopped, has he? So, Eric Axelsen with a drive-through penalty. Is that too many track cuts? I don't. Yeah, it must. Oh, in fact, yeah, there we go. Rich has just whispered in our ear that it is too many track cuts, isn't it? So we thought there was just going to be 5 seconds put on the end of each. 5 seconds, and if you did it again, 5 seconds. If you did it again, 5 seconds added on to your race time. But by the looks of it, it gets a little bit more severe.
Well, do you know what? We can give him a pass because he's been away for a little while, has Eric? But there is a time where we would be shocked at the mere notion of Eric Axelsen picking up a penalty. I mean, that's pretty much unheard of, but shows that track limits, you've got to be careful with those. And again, we get to the end of the race, they're getting a bit tired, they're getting a bit mentally fatigued. Very easy to make those little mistakes. Very good camera angle, by the way, there of the Mulsanne straight. Rich Hayden, annoyingly, Jack, doing quite a good job, isn't he, of bringing us these pictures of the race this evening? And these are some very arty shots from overhead of the cars as they race down the Mulsanne into the sunrise. It doesn't get much better than that, does it?
Well, let's just chill out. We haven't got to the interviews at the end or anything like that. We'll be talking to Oliver Gibson, and Josh Martin's graphic will come up or something. I'm convinced of it. But no, he is doing a good job, I have to say. It's been a good, and I'm glad the light is starting to appear as well, because I know quite a few people in the YouTube chat were hoping that would happen, and I know Rich was frantically trying to figure out why it wasn't happening earlier for everyone, but I'm not going to give him the credit to say he turned it on. He didn't turn the sunshine on, but it is good that he's having to do everything here, isn't he? He's doing the broadcast. He didn't quite get to do the driver's briefing, but he has to set all the rules. He has to balance, bop all the cars, and he has to set the server up and everything like that. So yeah, it's stressful for Rich, but he does own the company. It makes our job look very easy, Andy, doesn't it? We log on at like 7:05 if Rich is lucky, if we're not late, and eat chocolate and just talk about racing.
I don't know, he sits there, he presses some buttons and he thinks it's impressive. Good job from Rich all night long, and perfect opportunity for him to learn his craft as well over the 90 minutes or so, and leave us to what we are vaguely all right at doing, which is talking about the racing. We've had some good racing over the course of the last hour. We've got 25 minutes to go. Had some good racing in the prototypes. I have to say the GTEs have been a little bit one-sided. I don't think Jack Smith has lost the lead at any point in this race so far. He's bringing his DK Power Aston Martin through the Porsche curves. A very good-looking car it is as well. And he has been absolutely sublime. Just sidesteps out of the way, actually, of his teammate there, I think, Oliver Gibson, who manages to come through. And Jack Smith now heads for the pit lane. I don't think he's pitted yet, actually, Jack. So that minute and 10-second cushion that he's got over Fabrizio Torri will start to evaporate. There is Fabrizio just being overtaken at Indianapolis by Josh Martin. But fine, you do now get the GTE class leader in the pit lane.
I wouldn't be surprised if we put the zoom on him now. If he was digging out a handbrake and plugging that in and putting some drift tyres on the rear end, because he's just been in a class of his own, really, hasn't he? I know there is 2 classes out there, but there is a third one that's in the middle, and it's Jack Smith, because he's been absolutely sublime. We're watching Fabrizio Torri while the zoom is actually Eric Axelsen. There is Jack Smith. And
Sack the director.
I know. Just wanted to point that one out there, since we were so congratulating him earlier on. complimenting him even. But yeah, Jack Smith in the bottom right, even though he's in the pits, even though, well, he was in the pits, everything's looking hunky-dory for him. You still just don't get much of a reaction from him at all, do you? The concentration, but still the soaring at the wheel, that car is not easy.
No, absolutely, and perhaps on cold tyres now as well, fresh out of the pit lane. So yeah, that's easy to be caught out by that. But what Rich was doing there, I'm sure, was showing us something actually I was quite interested in. I wouldn't mind seeing Eric Axelson's Zoom call again, because did you see the way the wheel was shaking around? He took one hand off the wheel, I think going down the Mulsanne straight, and the thing was shaking around, something vicious in his hands. It goes to show this is physically demanding. Don't be fooled into thinking that sim racing is easy and you don't need any physical strength to do well at it. Here he comes, I think he's, just heading down the Mulsanne now. He's got both hands on the wheel for now, but if he takes that right hand off the wheel again, down straight, watch the way the wheels move around. You can see on the braking there, the whole thing's shaking around. He's obviously got quite a high-end wheel there, Jack, and he's obviously got the force feedback turned up very high, which is how I like to drive as well. And when you've got that really high force feedback setting, really your arms and your wrists ache after really 20 or 25 minutes or so behind the wheel. So you can imagine an hour and a bit now into this race, you do need quite a bit of upper body strength.
You do, actually, and I was just looking at his arms to see how he was sort of tensing, how his biceps are, if they're tensing everything. Because really, weirdly, you don't want your biceps tense or anything like that. You do when you're sort of soaring after going through the corners and everything like that. But really, you want to see it's all forearms, shoulders, and everything like that. You want to be slightly loose, weirdly, and relaxed to be able to take the corners properly. But in these cars, it looks like you don't get that option. With the direct drive turned all the way up as he has, the strength is madness. And obviously, these cars are so bumpy. The whole body is tensing. You can see it. And I've only just noticed as well, actually. We've had this Zoom on quite a few times. But the prize for tonight is an NGK remote control car, but there's also an ability to get the VRRC branded apparel, which Eric Axelson is doing a brilliant job of modelling right now. And it's even in the top right, you can see on his right of his chest, he's got Axelson and his race number as well embroidered onto it, or imposed onto it. I don't know what the name is actually, but it's a good opportunity to sort of show off what the drivers can win.
Indeed so, and I did finally get my hands on some VRRC clothing when I helped Rich out at an event earlier this season, and I can tell you that it is really high quality, actually, really nice, it fits well, it doesn't have my name on it yet, but really good stuff, and a worthy prize, definitely, for drivers who do well, not only in this race, but also they are available, I think, as prizes come the end of the championships as well for the foreseeable future, so yeah,
they
really
are,
nice touch.
Very, very quickly, sorry, Andy, for interrupting. Yeah. I know Rich will want me to mention this, but he is actually, through the distributors that he uses of that, he's actually designing the shirts and everything and selling them to other drivers and other teams. So the likes of the DK Power drivers, Oliver Gibson and Jack Smith, they have their own designed shirt, and Rich designed it for them in their own colours and in their own sort of design and everything, with their logos and everything like that. And he gets them ordered for you. So I think they're £30 a shirt or something like that, which is pretty good value. If you walk into Under Armour and you try and get a sports shirt or anything of that kind of material, you're spending 30, 40 quid without it even being personalised. So yeah, not bad.
There we go. Not a shop I frequent. I'll take your word for that, Jack. But that's really high quality stuff, and I wasn't aware of that. That's really nice to hear. Right, we've got a battle on our hands here. This is for 4th place in GTE, and Nelson Abranosa, who had been running 3rd before the pit stops, has caught Chris Blakey. So Nelson's lost some time somewhere, but he's about to try and regain some of it. Switches to the outside line of Chris Blakey. We're heading into the 2nd chicane on the Mulsanne. Blakey's late on the brakes though, and he'll try and stand his ground. There's a bit of contact. Abranosa's sideways, around he goes. Hard to see from that angle whether he was squeezed or whether he drifted wide into Blakey, but the end result is that Blakey holds onto the place and Abranosa will drop a long way back. Difficult to run side by side through there, and whereas an hour ago, Jack, I think we'd have seen Chris probably give that up and then try and get the slipstream down the next straight to reclaim the position. Late in the day, he stood his ground, he got his elbows out, and Nelson Abranosa, who looks thoroughly not bothered at all by that. Well, oh no, there we go. There is a shake of the head. He's not very happy. And he's now got 8.3 seconds to try and regain. Not quite a Kyle Felvis reaction to the contact there, but Nelson, you can see the frustration not only in his face, but also in his drive. He makes a little mistake down at Mulsanne corner as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that is the opposite of the reaction we sometimes see from the younger drivers, isn't it? But yeah, Nelson probably not enjoying that one that much. Obviously, not really sure by the angle, like we said, whether it's him, whether it's a racing incident, or whether it's the other Chris Blakey. But unfortunately, it's sort of whoever's fault it was. The biggest disappointment is obviously the fact that we don't get to see more of that battle, which we really would have enjoyed. Here is Josh Martin reading a book as he goes down the Muldown Straight. The only time we've actually put the Zoom call on him. He knows, isn't he? Is he in the Discord? Can he hear us or something?
I think he's almost certainly got the stream playing somewhere, because any chance to catch a glimpse of himself, and he's going to jump at it. Whether he's listening to us, I find very doubtful. I really wouldn't wish that on anyone having to listen to us for 90 minutes, actually, let alone someone who's supposed to be concentrating, Josh, on driving a high-performance prototype, not driving on the cleanest of lines down this last part of the Muldown Straight. And if he misses this braking zone, I will fall off my chair laughing, but I think he's just about going to get it all back together as he turns into the corner. I mean, multitasking is impressive, Jack, but it's more impressive if you're leading the race at the time. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just glad he chose a car magazine to hold up there on the street.
True.
Yes. It could have been a lot worse, couldn't it, really? But it is entertaining at least. And he gave us away. He definitely has the stream on somewhere. But, yeah, you're right. If he was leading, that would be a lot more impressive. It's like people who start pulling the handbrake in MX5 racing or something when they're in 17th position or something to get views on the stream. I think your friend Dave Chapman used to do that quite a few times in another series that we did. But to be fair to Dave, he used to do that and actually win, wouldn't he? Because he's an alien in an MX5. But yeah, Josh Martin giving us some entertainment at least. Here is the new boy, Case Wilhelms. Looking a lot less emotive than Josh. A little side eye there. Maybe he's looking at the stream as well. But yeah, he's not worrying about reading or anything like that. He's trying to get his lap times down. He's trying to focus and improve, Josh. This is what you need to be doing.
There you go. You see, the mindset matters, doesn't it, when you're attempting to get quicker in the sim? It's interesting, actually. He's made an extra pit stop as well, by the way. Should point that out. I did wonder whether that would happen because he pitted that bit earlier than the rest of them. But very different seating position for Case than it is for some of the other drivers. Josh Martin, you noticed from the side-on angle, you could really tell, sat quite a long way back and quite low and quite sort of slouched back, wasn't he? More similar, really, to how you would sit in the real car, whereas Willems here, you can see, sat sort of more upright and more conventional seating position, and that can make a big difference. That was the first thing, actually, when I got my sim racing setup a couple of years ago. The first thing that Ben Sharp, actually, who's a very good sim racer and real-world racer as well in Civic Cup, taught me, was that your seating position, the height of the seat, how far back or how close to the screen you are, what your field of view is on the screen, not only does it make a difference to the immersion and your comfort levels, but makes a massive difference, actually, to your speed. I was amazed how much difference it made, just lowering the seat a bit and tweaking the field of view ever so slightly. It made me instantly about a second a lap quicker. It's a bizarre thing, isn't it? When you jump into a real racing car, you don't think about that, really. There's a bit of seat adjusting that goes on, but you can't really adjust anything else. Whereas in the sim, you can micromanage that. You can tweak little things and stuff that a lot of sim racers out there probably wouldn't think of. I certainly didn't. Well worth having a little play around with.
It's what you get used to as well, isn't it? I mean, a lot of the drivers that we just saw, maybe Case and Nelson as well, they're probably just in normal office chairs or maybe even kitchen chairs, because that's what the setup allows you to do. You know, that's one of the good things about sim racing, is the fact that you can basically muddle together something for as cheap or as expensive as you want to go. The expensive stuff, you're right, does make a difference if you set it up properly, but it is expensive. Whereas if you're on a Logitech G29 wheel and you clamped it to your kitchen table and you've got a monitor and a PC that just about runs the game or something like that, yeah, you can get out there and compete with the people that do spend £10,000 on a simulator sort of thing, and that is obviously one of the reasons why we like it so much. But you're right, having a direct drive wheel, the seating position, those little nuances does help. I remember jumping in, in the real world, you do get used to a car as well. So I was driving my Ginetta for 3 years, and I always had the same steering wheel and the same seat, and it was always in the same sort of distance from everything and all that sort of thing. But all of a sudden I jumped to someone else's for the Birkett 6 Hour, and they had like a wheel that was double the size. I couldn't drive the thing. It took me a good 20 minutes, like trying to go around to the practice session just to get used to how much to have to turn the wheel, because obviously all of that changes. So it is what you get used to, isn't it? And yeah, even if you do upgrade from a G29 to a direct drive wheel, you're probably going to be slower for the first 3 or 4 hours of driving because you're having to get used to something else.
Yeah, the feel is just completely different, isn't it? And you have to kind of recalibrate your brain completely. I've definitely discovered that as I've sampled different wheels. I didn't realize how different the different wheels were, and what a difference it made to your speed and the way that it felt out there. And
And
I
the
used
pedals.
to think, and the pedals, the pedals are huge, certainly with braking. I mean, I really found that under braking, something like a hydraulic pedal, it takes a bit of getting used to, but then you're much more confident on the brakes when you sort of figure out how to use it. So yeah, there's a lot goes into this whole sim racing thing. You're right, you don't have to spend a lot of money if you don't want to. It won't necessarily make you any quicker, but it's all about feel, about comfort level, and about then having the confidence to really sort of push and be a bit more aggressive. And by having the right sim setup and setting it up correctly, that can make an absolutely huge difference. This man clearly has a pretty good sim setup. He seems to, I don't know whether this is the camera angle as well, Jack, but Oliver Gibson, our race leader by 27 seconds, by the way, seems to sit very low. His hands seem very high. It's always like he's looking up. I mean, it's making my neck hurt just looking at it, but again, it's obviously what he's comfortable with.
I reckon he said, didn't he, in that interview that he likes driving F1 cars and everything like that, and that is a very F1 seating position, isn't it? Where you're pretty much in an F1 car. People don't sometimes realise you're basically lying down.
Yeah.
You're lying down more than you would at Emirates business class sort of thing. Like you are pretty much flat, and the steering wheel is almost at chin level, and that is similar to what Oliver Gibson's sort of setup is looking like right now, isn't it?
Yeah, when you're in a single seater, actually, this is something else I didn't realise until I sat in one. You don't push the pedals up and down. You push them forward and backwards, because that's the direction of travel for your legs. You are literally lying almost flat. It's fascinating, and I'm sure there are some sim setups, easy for me to say, out there that can replicate that. He's not quite going that far, Oliver Gibson, but yeah, certainly a very different way of going about his sim racing.
Have you ever driven it like that? Have you ever driven a car like that?
Not a single seater, no. It's to be fair, I don't trust myself in one actually, and I've never enjoyed them in the sim either. I cannot figure out a high downforce car. I fancy giving it a go.
Well, there we go. Yeah, Rich, who you can't hear, ladies and gentlemen, has just gone on and said, I've driven an F3 car. He clearly wanted to get involved in the conversation. But yeah, I do remember Tom driving in the Formula Renault, which was the first thing he did after he got out of karting. And, you know, I was sort of like, oh, that must be really weird. I said exactly the same thing to him. I was like, wow, you don't really even push the pedals up and down, do you? You're pushing them forward. He was like, well, yeah, because that's you use your glutes, you use your quads a lot more than you would use your sort of your calves to actually push the pedals, because you have to have that much power to press a brake pedal in these proper cars. You actually have to use your entire leg and half your body to actually press the brake down properly. So it needs to be in that low, in that sort of position, because if it was just pushing it up and down like a real car, you wouldn't have the power.
No, exactly. And yeah, that's why, again, you've got to be very strong to be a real world racing driver in those kind of cars, certainly. And it is a very, very different challenge indeed. Right, we are amazingly only 10.5 minutes from the end of this race, and we've got a battle developing here. Once again, within the GTE field, it's for 4th place. Now, remember a while ago, Nelson Abranosa caught Chris Blakey. They went side by side into the chicane, they made contact, and Abranosa spun. Somewhere along the line, Nelson's got back ahead of Blakey. Blakey must have had a moment of his own. He was, though, Chris Blakey, about 4 seconds behind, but he's now halved that gap, and he's only 2 seconds back. So it's not quite for a podium position, this, but it is for 4th place, and it looks like being the closest of the battles as we head into the closing stages.
It does indeed, yeah. Not entirely sure how they did switch around, but I'm pleased to say that they're closing up, and we are about halfway through what would be a sprint race to the end, wouldn't it now? About 10 minutes to go. I wonder how the drivers are feeling out there, Andy. Are they exhausted? Do they not even feel it? Is there a mix out there? Yeah, I think the likes of Dalton Ayres and Axelson, if they're not mentally exhausted by the end of this one, then they should be doing 4 or 5 hour races, and they should probably team up, because they've been so close to each other, trying not to crash into each other so many times, haven't they? That it really does take a lot of processing power from the brain.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. We've talked a bit about the physical side of sim racing, which is perhaps more physically demanding than you might think, but the psychological drain on your brain as you get to this stage of a race. Your racing drivers make 1,000 decisions every second, and you're having to do that over such a long period of time. This is the time of the race where mistakes can very, very easily happen. At least this is one of those tracks where you've got some long straight, you catch your breath and catch your thoughts a little bit. Eric Axelsen, meanwhile, has just moved back ahead of Joel Lask, I noticed. That's for third place. And I think there's been a glitch on the timing screen. Joel Lask was already behind, wasn't he? So ignore that. Axelsen's actually lost a chunk of time, and Chris Blakey loses a chunk of time as well, as he gets it all wrong through the Dunlop chicane. Another one of those mistakes. I mean, Blakey is in a really difficult position because he's a part of the race where you're quite right. He's probably ready for the checkered flag to appear, really. And yet he's having to push very, very hard. Pushes too hard, though, through the Dunlop S's. And off he will go. Deposits his Aston Martin into the gravel trap. And we get a very good close-up view of his car, but not really the way in which he would have liked. And I think that probably has now cost him a chance of fourth place.
It's a shame, isn't it? I mean, it's a damn good-looking car, you're right. But it is a bit of a shame. I think maybe he was listening to me when I said that Jack Smith should really get the handbrake on and get the drift tyres, because it looks like he probably thought, you know what, that sounds like really good fun. I'll go and have a go at that. Not the idea when you go into the last 8 minutes. Maybe a bit of mental fatigue. Maybe the car, maybe he pitted a long time ago and the car, the tyres are starting to let go. Not entirely sure, but either way, an easy mistake to make as well once you've been pushing. And obviously, like we mentioned before, Andy, a long time ago it feels now, but the grip changes, doesn't it, as we go from night to day, and that alters the track state and everything like that. So all of a sudden he may be thinking he could have pushed it a little bit harder, but the tyres just clearly didn't want to.
Yeah, I mean, it's full daylight now, so the track temperature is going to be a lot higher than it was at the start of the race. And look, another one here struggling. That's Fabrizio Torri with a big slide through the Porsche curve. So, again, you would expect, really, the GTE cars to struggle with this more because they've got that extra weight, which means that they're pushing that extra weight through the tyres, through every corner, and it's that weight shifting. And look, he's going to bail for the pit lane, isn't he? He's got enough time in hand to make a free pit stop here, essentially, and he wants off those medium tyres that are well past their best. So, yeah, I think the GTE cars in particular are starting to struggle now. They're just sliding around that little bit. And it's sort of what I thought might happen, really. In the darkness, the tyres were absolutely fine to do this race on one pit stop. Some of those who pitted early, I think, are maybe now starting to regret that.
Yeah, it's you are asking a lot, aren't you, really? Especially if you don't get put those hard tyres on. But unfortunately, we have had some DNFs. I've just been looking. Stokes, not Ben, I don't think, is currently DNF'd, and so is John Jones. A bit of a shame. We did see John Jones having a big moment, didn't we? Going out of one of the corners on onto the one of the back straights. I don't know whether that damaged the car a little bit too much. It didn't look like it hurt it that badly, but he unfortunately has had to retire. Mark Stokes has apparently had a power cut. It's one of those things that won't happen in real life. Well, the car could cut out, to be fair, but yeah. We've been talking a lot about the advantages of sim racing, Andy, and a few of the trials and tribulations. Relying on the national grid is another one, probably. That's a bit of a challenge.
Well, it is, but then gearboxes break and so do drive shafts, and electrical issues can very easily halt the progress of a racing car. Just ask Toyota how they lost Le Mans a few years ago with only a lap or so to go. That was an electrical issue, I seem to remember, on the final lap of the race. Could you believe it? So, yeah, these things happen. John Jones, I've just looked in the Discord chat, actually. He said that he had some sort of an issue when he came into pit. He got an engine off message and couldn't get any drive, so it was a routine pit stop that ended up ending his race, unfortunately. So that's a shame to have lost John after he was enjoying it, he says, up to that point, which is what we like to hear. But yeah, with the mistake that we had for Chris Blakey a little while ago, we might now have our order pretty much set. Eric Axelsen's not been able to make any inroads into Elliot Dalton-Ayres after serving his drive-through penalty earlier on, but Eric's still pushing on, and as he works his way through the first of the chicanes down the Mulsanne Straight, he will be starting his final lap, I think, at the end of the next one. Yeah, he's 45 seconds behind Gibson, so by the time Gibson next gets to the line, Jack, I think we'll have less than 3 minutes left.
Yeah, he's pretty much bang on the other side of the circuit right now, is Oliver Gibson. So he's probably got about a minute and a half, maybe two to get over there, because he's at the slower portion of the circuit, of course, the back end. But yeah, we are probably going to be coming to a close sooner rather than later. And of course, if the GTE leader gets across the line just before Oliver Gibson does. If we could end up obviously having to wait around for a good 4 minutes before we actually get the finish of this race once the checker flag is dropped. But we'll see how it ends up. There is Oliver Gibson. Again, not very relaxed, isn't he? It's stark contrast to how the likes of Eric Axelson was looking when he was battling with Oliver Gibson and Elliot Dalton-Ayres at the beginning of this race. But now that they're just sort of hot lapping out there, keeping everything nice and composed, wheels shaking like you were mentioning earlier, they seem very, very happy with themselves and obviously, like you said, just enjoying the time.
Yeah, exactly so, and he has built up this now 30-second lead over Elliot Dalton-Ayres. That's a genuine lead because, okay, Axelson's had his penalty, but Dalton-Ayres didn't. And we know Elliot is a very quick driver, but Oliver Gibson not been plain sailing this race. He had his issues at the start, didn't get a good start, fell down to third or even fourth, I think, at one point, then picked his way back up through the podium places. As Jack quite rightly says, he was involved in that thrilling three-way fight for the lead in the early part of the race. But as he now does begin his final lap of the Circuit de la Sarthe, he is 31 seconds up the road, and we're not far away from getting that scenario actually that you mentioned, although I think we might end up with a bit of an orchestrated photo finish here between the two DK Power cars, because Jack Smith had only just started another lap. He's on the first part of the Mulsanne straight, so he's, 30 seconds maybe up the road from Oliver Gibson. The GTE lap times are around about 30 seconds slower than the P2s, so whether they mean to or not, they might end up in formation flying at the end of this race. And yeah, if Jack Smith does slip another lap behind Oliver Gibson, then that will be the GTE race over with as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're looking like the DK Power takes inspiration from the BMW logos, isn't it? But it could very well be fool me to say it's going to be Ford, because they do look like they're going to go for that photo finish here at Le Mans. But it's it's all fair play to them. They've been very, very quick, the two brothers. They've been absolutely rapid, haven't they? And don't really put a foot wrong so far.
No, they haven't, not at all. Smith, certainly. I mean, he's really been flawless all race long. 1 minute and 18 seconds up the road from Fabrizio Torri, who's got a similar margin then over Paul Laramie. Haven't mentioned Paul, really, but he's just been sort of quietly going about his business in third place in the class. Chris Blakey is fourth because Nelson Abranosa is in the pit lane. Not sure what that's all about. Yes, so according to the graphic, he's been in the pits for a while as well. Yes, there he is. So Abranosa out of the race, it would seem.
We saw him come into the pits, but I assumed he would come out at some point. But clearly, maybe not. I have no idea on that one from Nelson. I wonder on the Zoom call if he's actually still in his seat or whether he's had to go and do something. I'm not entirely sure, but maybe Rich can have a look on the Zoom without putting it up on the screen. But yeah, it's a strange one there. It's a bit of a shame for Nelson because he was having a good little battle with Chris Blakey, wasn't he?
He was, yes, but not sure why he has retired from the race. We're hearing, no, he's not in the Zoom, so I think he is done for the day. That's a shame. Jack Smith is not. He is at Indianapolis. Oliver Gibson is approaching Indianapolis. So I really do think that they've timed this absolutely to perfection. I don't know how orchestrated this has been. I think they've just both been running their genuine pace, and they're going to meet up right at the end if Oliver Gibson doesn't throw it off the road. He was very aggressive there, sliding his way through Indianapolis as he makes his way now towards the final sector of the lap. Still about a minute's worth of driving to be done, though, Oliver. Don't start writing that winner's speech just yet. He's got to make his way through the Porsche curves and the Ford chicane in order to get home to the checkered flag. He looks like he's definitely still concentrating, doesn't he? Pushing hard, I think, to try and set a good lap time to end his evening's work. But as the time ticks down towards zero, the DK Power Racing driver is going to claim a victory in the LMP2 class. His teammate Jack Smith is going to win in the GTEs, and I reckon when Gibson pops out of the Porsche curves here, he will see on the horizon a blue and white Aston Martin, and that will be the car that is about to claim victory in the GTE class as well. Down towards the Ford chicane then for the final time. There is Jack Smith in the distance. I think Jack's going to get one more lap if he wants it, or does he back off here at the flag? He's got more than enough time to do it. Oliver Gibson's going to get the victory. It is going to be the formation finish for DK Power, who dominate here at Le Mans. Oliver Gibson victorious in the LMP2 class, and it is Jack Smith who wins in GTE. And don't you tell me that this being only a special fun race doesn't matter to Oliver Gibson. He is absolutely ecstatic with that.
Yeah, as he should be. He drove a pretty much perfect race, didn't he? After that first 20 minutes of battling. He actually finally got into his rhythm. He got up to the front. And he ends up driving for about an hour and 20 minutes perfectly. And then he gets what he wanted, which is a photo finish with Jack Smith right at the end. One to put up at the family dinner table, isn't it, over Christmas, I'm sure. It's great stuff by Jack Smith as well. Worth mentioning him. But yeah, Oliver Gibson absolutely buzzing. And it's nice to see that kind of excitement coming out on stream as well.
Absolutely so. So Gibson victorious in the prototype class. Smith in GTE. Elliot Dalton-Ayres has come through to finish second in P2. And look at the way Axelson's dropped back. I think Axelson's been off the road again somewhere. He was 14 seconds adrift of Dalton-Ayres. Suddenly 28.5 seconds back. But Eric Axelson, after a troubled race, we'll have a chance to chat to him in a moment or two. He is going to come home and claim the third place in P2. Fabrizio Torri comes home to finish second in GTE after making a late pit stop as his tyres seem to be well past their best, but he was over a minute clear of Paul Laramie, who is on course hopefully for third place if he doesn't throw it into the scenery. He, a bit like Oliver Gibson, was a bit sideways out of Indianapolis for the final time, but Paul Laramie, haven't seen a lot of the Automat car on screen tonight, Jack, but he's driven a really solid race.
He has indeed, and we can talk to him about it, of course, because if he finishes in this position, which he's got 40 seconds to play before Chris Blakey overtakes him, then we'll be able to have a chat about his potentially boring race, or potentially not boring. I don't really know which way he'll be finding it, but he'll be happy to be on the podium anyway. And if he can carry that sort of form into the championship, into the Caymans, then he'll be a force to be reckoned with once again. Paul Laramie, I'm looking forward to it. He's always a good person to have towards the top end.
Yeah, no, he certainly is. Paul Laramie was... I'm just looking back, actually, to see whether he was around. Yes, he was around back in the last time we raced in the Caymans. Not a top 10 finisher back then, but he's another driver who has massively improved since then. And I'm pretty sure we will see him up towards the front this time around. He's going to finish third place here at Le Mans in the Aston Martin. Pitches the GTE car through the final couple of chicanes. He will face the checkered flag in the next few seconds. Across the line he goes then. And Paul Laramie claims the race victory then. He crosses the line and will finish off the podium finishers in GTE. Right, it's going to take a little bit of work, I think, to gather all of our drivers together for podium interviews. So we're going to get busy with that. And in the meantime, we're going to take a very, very quick Welcome back, everyone, to the VRRC, where our 90-minute endurance race here at Le Mans has just concluded with a dominant performance for the DK Power pairing. We've seen that a few times in recent past. This time, though, with Oliver Gibson and Jack Smith both claiming the race win as they win in their respective classes. It's Oliver Gibson who gets the victory. LMP2 class, though, and he, I believe, can now catch up with Jack Oliphant.
Yes, he can. Sorry, I was expecting to do second place, but it's okay. Yes, Oliver Gibson, congratulations on the big race victory there. You must be absolutely buzzing. We saw your reaction in the car. Actually, we already know how.
Yeah, I mean, formation over the line. We didn't plan it, but I was praying for Jack to slow down, and yeah, so he did. And yeah, it's a good win at Le Mans. So I'm actually still driving. I'm trying to get back to start-finish line, but yeah, it's just a good win, and I felt like I should have won the endurance race last time. I just got unlucky with a bit of rain, and then after that it was my fault. So to get a bit of redemption is nice. But yeah, perfect race for me.
It did look like a pretty perfect race, apart from the first 15, 20 minutes where you probably had a bit more of a headache than you were expecting, didn't you? Getting these things off the line looked a little bit tricky.
Yes, very much so. Don't know what happened, to be honest. But I think I don't know what happened really. I think I bogged down a bit and then tried getting more revs in, and obviously revs equals wheel spin. So just span the wheels and off I didn't go. So yeah, and then after that, just trying to stay with them because they were very quick in the first. I don't know, well, the whole race obviously, but in that first bit, I was thinking, oh, this could be a long race. But yeah, no, at the start definitely gave me a headache. There was a couple. I don't want to say near misses, but that's sort of what they were. But obviously that's going to happen. And yeah, no, in the end, good result. Just a bit disappointing on that start.
Well, you say disappointing. I mean, you got the race win, didn't you? And then with about 50 or an hour and 10 to go, actually, you were pretty much back into the lead. It did give us an awesome watch, I have to say, but there's going to be more on who the stars of the show were in terms of the racing with Andy and in a couple of seconds' time on the podium. But yeah, Oliver Gibson, it was awesome. I know this feels a little bit short, but we've got 6 interviews to go through. So big congratulations on the special event, and hopefully we'll be seeing you in the Caymans.
Yes, definitely.
Right, brilliant stuff. Well done, Oliver. We'll speak to you next season.
Yes, cheers. Thanks to sponsors.
Nice stuff. Well done to Oliver then, who wins from pole, but it wasn't quite. Was it had a fantastic battle in the early stages with, amongst others, Elliot Daltonairs, who ends up coming home in second place. Elliot, welcome back to the commentary box. Been a while since we had a chance to have a chat here, and yeah, great to have you back on the podium. Did you enjoy the opening half hour or so of that race as much as we did?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I enjoyed it a bit less when I fell out the toe, and then like we're just we were just getting away. But yeah, the first maybe like 10 minutes were amazing. The start was great. I mean, like Ollie said, he bogged down a little bit, but so did I. So I just gave it the old clutch kick and off it went. So managed to get past Eric and Ollie, and then for the first lap just kind of held it, and then the toe brought him in, and then it all kind of kicked off with the battling. But yeah, overall it was good to come away with the second.
It's a nice place to race as well, isn't it, Le Mans? Especially in these P2 cars where the slipstream's quite powerful, but you've got lots of space down those straights. How difficult was it, though, to follow another prototype through something like the Porsche Curves or the Dunlop S's? Because it did look like some drivers struggled with that more than others.
It didn't feel much different following someone, apart from you had to maybe lift off a little bit earlier than you'd like to, just so you don't run into the back of them. Mistake what's going to happen. But no, it was really good fun. In the tow, it was always nice because you'd get past I got past Eric, and then on the next straight you'd get past me because of the tow, and it just kept going for a little bit. But no, it was good fun following each other. But yeah, a bit disappointed of the big gap. But what had happened was me and Joel were running our tires to a psi too high, and it was just churning up the rears. So yeah, yeah, it was all right.
That's interesting. Okay, we saw some of the GT cars struggling with tyre wear towards the end. I wasn't sure what the prototypes would be like at the end of the race. Clearly, you've got to be careful with your tyre management there as well. But it was good to see you on the podium anyway, Elliot. Congratulations on that second place finish. And same question as Jack just asked to the race winner. Are we going to see you back in the Porsches in a week or so?
Absolutely, it's me and Joel as a team, and I think it's Reese and Darren in the Clios. So you'll see two teams of Phoenix in different championships. So yeah, it's gonna be a good season, hopefully.
Good stuff. Well, Elliot was a top 10 finisher regularly in the Caymans last time, and I think it's fair to say you've come on a bit since then. So we're looking forward to seeing how you get on. Best of luck with that, and well done on the podium finish tonight.
Cheers, Andy.
That was Elliot Daltonairs, second place finisher, the final prototype driver to chat. The man, Jack, who we haven't had a chance to talk to in a little while.
It is indeed Eric Axelsson. The Swedish assassin is back. Eric, big congratulations on the podium. And after a couple of weeks off, couple of months off, actually, you must be pretty proud to get back up that so high up.
Uh, Thank you, Jack. I wasn't. I'm to be honest quite frustrated with my performance tonight. Wasn't really what I was hoping for. I was, of course, I was aiming to win this. And yeah, the first, I mean, the first like 15 minutes was great. The racing with Ollie and Elliot. Yeah, but the rest of the race was, yeah, it was terrible. It was only my fault.
I was gonna say, well, it wasn't terrible for us to watch, if that's any consolation to you, Eric. It was you were pretty much on screen, I'd say about 70% of the time as well, because yourself and Elliot were really very close. But we did see a couple of incidents where GTE cars potentially blindsided you, especially like going into that final chicane. How tempted were you to have to go and change your underwear after that?
Yeah, well, this is my first time, running like an LMP race with class. So that was a new thing for me, and I mean it's really when you like approach uh, the GTE cars, especially in like the slow corners, and they have so different braking points from you, and so yeah, I learned a lot from that the hard way, I guess. But it was really fun. It was really fun.
We obviously didn't see much of you in the last Touring Car Championship because you were running the Touring Car Championship. But with the Caymans coming up, is the plan for you? Because we obviously very much enjoy seeing Eric Axelsson on the grid. And although you did a brilliant job at controlling the weather and everything like that, and everything that you did last season, are we going to see you back in a Porsche?
Mm. Well, I won't do the Porsches. I tell you that much. But I will be back. I will be back.
Oh, that's what we like to hear, Eric. And it's been brilliant to see you at the special event at least. So fingers crossed, even if you don't do the Porsches, maybe we'll see you at the next special event as well. And obviously, hopefully, you'll stick around the VRRC community and helping out and everything like that. So big congratulations on the third place. And you never know, I'm sure we'll catch up soon.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. Echo those thoughts. Eric Axelsson is certainly a big part of the community here at the VRRC, as is Jack Smith, who just can't stop winning at the moment. Jack, our double reigning champion in the touring cars, started from pole position in the GT class tonight, led every single lap, I think, and managed to win by a pretty. It doesn't get a lot better than that, Jack.
No, not at all. Yeah, I was well happy with the strategy. It worked out quite well because I think the mediums they did the length that I think for last. But I could be wrong. I don't know how Fabrizio found them, but the mediums for me in the second stint, it wasn't that long. Got off quite quickly, so yeah, I was happy that I chose the hards. It was a little bit difficult to get away at the start, and Fabrizio kept me honest there. So yeah, really good pace in the first sector, which I didn't see coming at all. So yeah, it made me sweat a little bit through the first sector. But just try to make up where we could for the rest of the sectors. So yeah, really happy, and then I can't believe that timing for the finish. It was unbelievable. I saw Ollie just catching every lap. It got to the final lap. I was trying to figure out whether that was his final lap, and then I was like trying to sort of manage my pace, so we managed to line up right at the finish line, and it worked out perfectly. So yeah, literally could not ask anything better for a team result. So yeah, really happy.
If only things were that straightforward when you start fighting for a championship in in the touring cars, or perhaps in the Porsches, if we'll have you back for that in the next few weeks. But yeah, you mentioned tyres there. We'll chat to Fabrizio in a moment, but he had to make a late pit stop. Looked like he was really sliding around a bit. As it transitioned from night to daytime, do you feel a particularly big difference in the way that the car was handling, and then also what effect that had on the tyres?
Uh, To be honest, I under pressured my tires a bit, so I had them set up in a way that it was the perfect pressure for where I went through the Porsche curves, because that's where the tires are used the most. Because obviously it's a long old track, Le Mans, so you gotta there's different. They're never going to be perfect for the whole track, right? So I set them up for Porsche curves, and I think when it got today, it was near the end of the stint anyway, so the tires sort of started to go off anyway. So I couldn't really tell a big difference, but yeah, I just quite happy that I switched to the mediums rather than the hards for the final stint, because that definitely found some pace, and Yeah, just really happy with the way it's turned out.
Is endurance racing something that you've done a lot of? Is this a kind of racing that you enjoy? You do seem to me like a driver who quite likes, his own space and just kind of pounding around lap after lap. You seem to be in the zone, and your consistency was that of a driver who I feel has done this before.
Yeah, so I've done, oh God, how many different sims? I've done like R Factor iRacing 24 hours at this track, so I kind of know it inside out. I know all the little like nuances and stuff, which is probably why I was a fair bit down the road. So like you said, you go into a zone. I try to explain this to people, but they don't really understand it that much. You just sort of zone out and you just drive, and then all of a sudden it's the end of the race. And it happened in the touring car championship as well, when near the start of the series, where I just kept doing lap after lap, like you said, and it's just you go into some sort of driving zone, which is kind of cool. So, but yeah, same thing happened today, and we ended up finishing the race earlier than I thought it would be anyway. So, but yeah, really happy.
Well, doesn't time fly when you're leading the race by a country mile? Congratulations, Jack, on the race victory, and hopefully we'll see you again in a week or so in the Porsche.
Yeah, I'm going to try my best to make it difficult now with university and stuff. So, but if not, I do have a super sub, so I'll keep you posted because he's not far off pace, not far off pace wise against me. So yeah, we'll have a look.
Interesting. Well, try and get them along anyway, I'd say, as even, whether you're here or not, the more quick drivers we get on the grid, the better. Jack, well done. Congrats on the race win.
Cool. Thank you very much, Andy.
So Jack Smith wins in GTE, but as we heard there, Jack Oliphant, he was pushed hard, particularly in the early stages, by our second place finisher.
He was indeed. And Fabrizio Torri, nice to have you back in the commentary booth with us. I think I remember you coming in a couple of seasons ago to get a race victory. But here at the the GTEs at Le Mans, a podium, you must be happy.
Yes, it was a good race. It's always special to race here at Le Mans. Even if you end up being the last on the grid, it's always special. And I really like this track. I really love the atmosphere this track is bringing you while you are racing it. And yeah, it was a good race. Not that I didn't have any super issue because I had a mid pace because Jack put a very fast pace and I couldn't get it. And the most amazing thing was to be passed from the LMPs in the braking zones because they sound really cool. And it was a pleasure for the ears, you know.
I'm sure it was Fabrizio. Yeah, it's a shame that unfortunately everything's muted on my screen, so I didn't get that pleasure. But hopefully, the ladies and gentlemen at home certainly enjoyed it just as much as you did. And obviously, maybe Jack Smith was a little out of reach for you, but you obviously had a lot of pressure from behind as well, didn't you? So, how was it sort of maintaining the pace for the hour and a half? Is endurance racing something you've done quite a bit, or are you more of a sprinter?
No, I'm used to endurance race. When I do endurance race, usually I enter a special race mode, and I put myself in a steady state where
Yeah.
I can put fairly close lap times. So for me, it's good, and I didn't have any major issue, as I said before, and it was a good race at the end of the end of the day. Yeah.
Well, we always enjoy watching you, Fabrizio. Are you going to be back? Are you doing the Clios? Are you doing the Caymans or anything?
Unfortunately, not because
No.
I have a lot of stuff going on in real life, and unfortunately, for the next months, I'm going to be fairly away from the PC, so I can't put the time that I want in this series, so I'll pass this time.
That is a great shame, Fabrizio, because from what we saw, you've been improving pretty much week on week, and obviously going into the rear wheel drives, the GTEs, we thought, you know what, he's on for a potentially strong championship next time round. But fingers crossed, we'll be seeing you again in a couple of months, maybe after Christmas or something like that. Things calm down for you, we can have you back on grid.
Yeah, I have to thank you all you guys, Rich and all the guys in the staff because they are doing a great job. Also, thanks to you for the live commentary, and I hope you're doing well for the next races and the next championships.
I'll tell you what, Fabrizio, this is the reason why I'm going to miss having you around, because you're the only driver that ever says anything like that. So thank you very much, Fabrizio. It's not a slate on everybody else. It's just an extra nice thing. An extra nice thing to hear, Fab. Thank you very much, and congratulations on the second place.
Thank you.
You heard it here first, everyone. Fabrizio is Jack's, and he's going to be.
I'm not even going to lie. I don't care.
All right then, Paul. The pressure's on now. You've got to somehow top that. So good to have Paul Laramie back on the podium, a third place finish. Paul, what nice things do you want to say about us?
I just think I prefer you, Andy, it over Jack personally. But,
right, I'm off.
Good to have you here, Paul. Well done, by the way. Solid podium. We didn't see a lot of you, unfortunately, during that race, but in some ways, that's a good thing, isn't it? In endurance racing, it means you're staying out of trouble, and that's a big part of getting onto the podium at the end.
Yeah, at one point I thought I was on the wrong strategy, because I started on the hard with a plan to do hard, run it as long as I can get away with, and run the medium for the end part. And both Fabrizio and Nelson were running mediums, and I was surprised how long they ran them for. I think it was lap 9 or 10 they came in. But it worked out. I think I had a couple of spins early on, but managed to get into a bit of a rhythm, and it was really just making sure the strategy right and get some consistency through to the end.
Yeah, because they're not easy cars to drive, these, are they? The Aston Martins, they're big, they're heavy, they've got a lot of power, and we saw quite a lot of drivers struggling at the end of the race and having moments when those tyres were going off. So, talk us through how much of a challenge these cars are, and was there a particular part of the track that was really catching you out?
Yeah, the bit that I struggled to get the most pace was the kind of last sector through that kind of Dunlop S's, through that kind of fast section where quite early on I actually had a big moment, and I think I nearly took out the leader at one point as I spun around it. Like, you can go from being absolutely fine to catching the edge of a curb, and it just spits you out the other side. So you have to be quite precise with them to get them to control well. But I was very thankful that I ran the hard for about an extra 3 laps over the couple of guys that came in earlier, because it meant my mediums held on a bit longer at the end. I think Chris had a drive through. It meant I could kind of manage the time where I didn't need to be absolutely flat out right at the very end. So it kind of worked out well.
Which, of course, is the part of the race where that fatigue starts to really come into play. Are you a driver who's done a lot of these longer races? How did you find that sort of last 20, 30 minutes or so?
Yeah, it's not... I mean, in the real world, I've done things like the Burkett Relay, which is kind of 1 hour, 10-minute stints, which I've always enjoyed doing. We don't tend to do a lot of the endurance stuff in the sim, but enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. It was, it wasn't too worn out at the end, so yeah, it was good. I think the sprint gives you more of that kind of, you have more battling, more kind of racecraft, but yeah, it's good.
You probably learn quite a lot, I think, about yourself as well as about how best to drive in a long distance race as well, don't you? So yeah, something I've always enjoyed, and hopefully we'll have more of it in the future here at the VRRC. But for now, Paul, congratulations on the podium. Great to have you back here. Always a pleasure to have a chat. And we'll see you again soon. I'm sure you're back for the Porsches.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Andy. We'll see you in the Porsche.
Looking forward to it. Got there at the end are 6 podium finishers, and in a way, are podium finishers in the championship as well, because it's a 1-race series. This, and Oliver Gibson confirmed as the race winner, with Elliot Dalton second and Eric Axelson the third. This all within the LMP class, of course. Joel Lask just missed out on the podium with 4th ahead of Josh Martin, Andy Carroll, and newcomer Case Willems, who I don't think made it to the end, or maybe had to make an extra pit stop, but good to have him out on the... It's not the last time that we will see him in GTE. Jack Smith, dominant for DK Power Racing, with Fabrizio Torri in second. Paul Laramie, as we've just heard, coming home in third, ahead of Chris Blakey, Alok Iyengar, Darren Butler, Nelson Abrinosa after a couple of issues towards the end, whilst Mark Stokes and John Jones, unfortunately, not running at the end of what was a very, very entertaining race. That is... Jack Oliphant, that just about brings things to a close. We've been here a little bit longer than we're used to, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And hopefully, if we run another one of these in the future, which I'll certainly be lobbying for, we'll get a few more drivers on the grid, because I think there's some real potential here.
I think there is as well. By the sounds of it, the 6 drivers that we just had a chat to all enjoyed it. Quite a lot of them actually said they come from endurance racing. So although sprint racing is a good sort of side hustle for them, you could argue. I'm sure everybody would enjoy trying to stretch their legs a little bit in some more endurance fiascos. Maybe even only one a month or something like that, or or a long-standing championship between each of the major championships. I don't know. We'll have to see. But a big thank you to all the sponsors and the partners as well for joining on with the VRRC and this special event. I'm sure hopefully they'll be back for the major events as well in a couple of weeks' time.
Indeed so. For now, though, thank you everyone for watching. We will be back with the Cayman Cup and the Renault Clios within the next week or so. Be sure, if you want to get yourself out onto the grid, to head over to our Discord and get your entries in. But for now, thank you to Jack Oliphant, to all of our drivers, and of course to Rich Hayden, who I think has done a splendid job for his first time producing our show. We will all be back for the Cayman Cup in the near future.